One blown tire. That was the only push fate needed to shove Lucas Blackwater back into the path of the woman who'd owned his nightmares for the last 3 years. A crater in the asphalt on Detroit's industrial fringe had shredded the tire of Lucas's pristine black Mercedes. And as his driver got out to inspect the ruin, Lucas found himself staring at a grimy diner called Rosie's. It was a relic from a life he had clawed his way out of its neon sign, stuttering feebly against the gloom of an evening drizzle. Through windows smeared with rain, he saw booths with gutted vinyl and fluorescent lights that flickered with a sickly, decades-old hum. The entire building seemed to sag with the weight of exhaustion and defeat. He desperately needed a coffee. The decision to step inside was one that would unravel his entire world. A tiny, tarnished bell announced his arrival. The air was thick with the scent of scorched coffee old grease and the quiet desperation of living one paycheck away from disaster. A couple of long-haul truckers hunched over the counter cradling their mugs. In a corner booth, an old couple silently split an order of fries. The news droned on from a corner TV to an audience of no one. "Find a seat," a weary voice echoed from the kitchen. Lucas slid into a booth by the window where he could keep an eye on his car. He instinctively pulled out his phone, his thumb already swiping through memos on the Toronto acquisition that had to be closed by Friday. His thoughts were already 1,000 miles from this forgotten corner of Detroit, right up until he heard footsteps and glanced up. His entire world seized. Standing there, a coffee pot gripped in one hand, a stained apron cinched tight around her waist, was the one woman he had spent a fortune in therapy trying to excise from his memory. Tiffany, his ex-wife. She was frozen, her body locked in place. Her golden kinky twists were pulled back in a severe ponytail, with a few stray strands escaping to curl around her face, catching the cheap light like filaments of gold. In this place of decay, she was wearing almost no makeup, just a slash of eyeliner that made her dark brown eyes seem impossibly large and deep against her rich brown skin. But those eyes were bruised with fatigue, shadowed by dark circles that told a story of too many doubles, not enough sleep, and a life lived on the brink. She was thinner. The healthy, vibrant glow he remembered was gone, replaced by the dull sheen of chronic stress. Her hands, which he recalled as being soft and perpetually smudged with paint from her canvases, were now chafed and raw from work. But even hollowed out by hardship, standing in a faded waitress uniform that looked a size too big, Tiffany Campbell was still without question the most stunning woman he had ever laid eyes on. For a long second, neither of them breathed. An abyss of 3 years yawned between them, filled with unspoken words and carefully built defenses. 3 years of pretending the other was a ghost in a city of 4 million souls. Now only 3 feet of cracked linoleum and a universe of pain separated them. Lucas, his name was a ghost on her lips, her expression a perfect mask of disbelief. Tiffany, his own voice was ice colder than he'd intended. But the bitterness of 1,000 days and nights didn't just evaporate because his heart had slammed against his ribs the moment he saw her. As they locked eyes, Lucas felt a hairline fracture spread across the armor around his heart. It was a feeling he'd sworn was long dead and buried deep. Even now, after all of it, the current that ran between them was terrifyingly real, an invisible force, just as potent as the one that had first crashed them together 7 years ago. He found his gaze cataloging every detail against his will. The lines of weariness carved into her face the way her uniform hung from her diminished frame. The rough, almost wounded look of her hands. She looked like she was being worn away, as if life was sanding her down particle by particle. A cruel, dark part of him whispered that this is what she deserved, yet he was physically incapable of looking away. He was held captive by her gaze until her eyes narrowed into dangerous slits. "What in the hell are you looking at?" Her voice was a razor slicing through the diner's quiet hum. Lucas flinched, caught. "Nothing. Just what?" "Taking in the scenery, cataloging how far the mighty have fallen, so you can drive back to your high-rise and feel superior." Tiffany shifted the weight of the coffee pot, her jaw a hard line. "Let me save you the trouble, Lucas. You won. I juggled 2 jobs to stay afloat. I'm exhausted. I'm broke. So is your curiosity satisfied I didn't say a word? You didn't have to." She shot back, her voice laced with venomous sarcasm. Your face screamed it loud and clear. That self-satisfied "I told you so" expression. I'd recognize it anywhere. And against all reason, against the fury and the pain and the 3 solid years he'd dedicated to hating her, a corner of Lucas's mouth twitched. There she was, the inferno he'd thrown himself into. That volatile temper that could ignite from a spark to a wildfire in less than 2 seconds. He had completely forgotten the way she made every nerve in his body feel alive, even when she was eviscerating him. Coffee, Tiffany demanded, her tone suggesting she'd rather pour it in his lap. That, however, was Tiffany's tell. Her anger always came out in words, never actions. A fury contained by a decency she couldn't shake. Black Lucas managed to say, marshaling every bit of his focus to keep his voice level, professional, and completely detached. As she poured, Tiffany found herself sizing him up, and a wave of self-loathing washed over her for even doing it. For the fact that after all this time, after the soul-crushing exhaustion, the corrosive bitterness in 3 entire years spent clawing him from her memory, her traitorous heart still fluttered when her eyes landed on Lucas Blackwater. He wore his wealth like a second skin now. The suit alone was probably worth more than her last 3 months of paychecks combined. The timepiece on his wrist could settle her rent for an entire year. But it wasn't the display of affluence that stole the air from her lungs. It was just him. Lucas had always been handsome, but success had sculpted him into something absolutely ruinous. His light brown skin seemed to radiate a vibrant health that money alone couldn't buy. His hair, a perfectly shaped, low-cut afro with tight umber curls, was utterly immaculate. A faint goatee framed lips that were far too full, lending him an air of sophistication that made her chest constrict with the ghosts of a time when those lips smiled only for her, when they used to claim hers. At 6'4", with a powerful set of shoulders and a lean, hard physique that even tailored fabric couldn't conceal, he looked like he'd just walked off the cover of a magazine called Billionaires Guaranteed to Wreck Your World. He was the living embodiment of everything she had forfeited, everything they said she had carelessly thrown away. And the most agonizing part, the absolute cruelest twist of it all, was how her body still answered to him. Her pulse still surged, her skin still held the phantom memory of his touch. 3 years of relentless effort to forget, and a single look at Lucas Blackwater burned it all to ash. She placed the coffee cup on the table with more force than intended, causing the dark liquid to slosh over the rim. "Will there be anything else?" she clipped out. Lucas settled back into the booth, his formidable presence seeming to shrink the space around him. His deep brown eyes dissected her face as if trying to reconcile an impossible equation. The silence stretched thick and heavy for a moment too long. The air between them vibrated with an unspoken war. Resentment was there, certainly, but it was tangled with something else, something neither dared to name. Finally, Lucas broke the quiet, his tone a dangerous casual drawl. "So how is Rocco holding up?" The name struck her like a physical blow. Tiffany's spine went ramrod straight. Her grip on the coffee pot became so tight her knuckles paled against her skin. "I'm sorry." Her voice was a lethal whisper. "Rocco," Lucas said again, and this time all traces of casualness had vanished. His tone was glacial, as sharp as a shard of glass. "The man you cheated on me with. I imagine he's a distant memory considering all this." He made a lazy, dismissive gesture at the diner, at her uniform, at the wreckage of her life. The message was brutally clear. This is the life you earned. This is the hell you deserve. For a heartbeat, Tiffany could only stare, absorbing the sheer audacity. Then she did the last thing Lucas could have predicted. She laughed. It was not a sound of mirth. It wasn't even born of rage. It was the laugh of a soul that had survived 3 years of damnation, only to realize the architect of her misery was still profoundly ignorant of his own sins. "You know something, Lucas?" Tiffany set the coffee pot down with a solid crack and folded her arms across her chest. "For a man they call a genius, someone who conjured a multi-billion-dollar empire out of thin air, you are in fact breathtakingly stupid." A muscle in Lucas's jaw tightened. His hands went flat against the tabletop. "What did you just say?" "You heard me." Tiffany leaned in, her voice dropping to an intense whisper that hit it harder than any shout. "Stupid, oblivious, incurably dense. Do I need to break out smaller words for you to grasp the concept? Watch yourself, Tiffany." "Watch myself." A harsh, grating laugh escaped her. "Watch out for what, Lucas? What could you possibly do to me that hasn't already been done? I have nothing left to lose. I lost my home, my name, my entire career as an art teacher. I worked 2 dead-end jobs to pay for a tiny apartment with roaches the size of my own thumb. So please, I'm dying to know. What fresh hell should I be watching out for? You lost those things because of what you did." Lucas's voice finally cracked, frustration ripping through his ironclad composure. "I gave you the world, Tiffany. Everything, a penthouse apartment, complete security, a life other people can't even fathom, and you tossed it aside for some sweet-talking snake." "I didn't do it." The words were clean, deliberate slaps, and they stopped Lucas's tirade cold. You never said you didn't, he shot back, his control unraveling fast. I put those pictures in front of you, you in our bed with him, and all you did was break down and apologize. You never once looked me in the eye and said you didn't sleep with him. Oh, my apologies. The sarcasm in her voice was a corrosive acid. I am so terribly sorry that coming to in a fog with a skull-splitting migraine and hours of my life just gone, half naked in bed with a practical stranger I had met only one time while the man I loved, the man I would have died for, stared at me like I was a piece of filth. I'm sorry that didn't provide me with the perfect state of mind to articulate a coherent legal defense right there on the spot. A profound stillness had fallen over the entire diner. The cook was now leaning against the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, taking in the whole scene. The old woman at the counter was nodding slowly, as if Tiffany were delivering a sermon. Lucas's mouth opened, then snapped shut. The thought had never even occurred to him. It had never even occurred to him to wonder how she felt waking up to that absolute horror. He couldn't afford to question his judgment now. The proof was undeniable, photographs from every angle, a stream of messages. There were witnesses. The text chain. Tiffany. Lucas insisted, his voice dropping to a near whisper, but losing none of its steel. I read the thread between you two. It went on for weeks. I can't get you out of my head. Last night was incredible. When are we doing that again? How do you explain that away? I can't, Tiffany conceded. And for a breathtaking second, Lucas tasted sweet vindication, because I was never the one who sent them. The triumphant feeling evaporated. That's a convenient excuse, Lucas began, but Tiffany's voice sliced right through his. For the first few hours after you shoved those pictures in my face, she began, her tone now unshakable, infused with a chilling certainty, I honestly believed I might have done something monstrous. The hangover was punishing, the worst of my entire life. I couldn't recall a single thing about the night before. That photograph was staring back at me, a verdict in itself. I was convinced I'd gotten wasted at that charity function and made the single greatest mistake of my life. She drew herself up, and the light caught her golden, kinky twists, casting her as some kind of warrior queen, even in a stained apron. But then you showed me the text messages. And I went through my own phone, Lucas. Every last one of them had vanished, wiped clean. They weren't in my deleted folder, not in my outbox. They were simply gone. Her deep brown eyes drilled into him. And what about the hotel staff you were so quick to believe? The security guard on the night shift who swore he'd seen me coming and going? The neighbor in 4B who claimed she saw Rocco sneaking out of our penthouse after midnight? She moved a little closer, and Lucas was hit with her scent. It was a mix of coffee and that unique essence of Tiffany that made his lungs feel tight. That was the moment I knew, she whispered. Someone went to extraordinary lengths to tear our marriage apart. They manufactured false statements, doctored photos, and put a man in my bed while I was passed out. And Lucas, it worked. It worked because you were so primed, so desperate to see the worst in me, that you never even stopped to question the setup. A block of ice formed in the pit of Lucas's stomach. That's insane. Are you suggesting this was all some elaborate conspiracy? I'm not suggesting anything. Tiffany cut in, straightening her posture as she reached for the coffee pot once more. I wasted months pleading with you to look deeper, to challenge the so-called evidence, to just hear me out. I'm through pleading. I'm through defending myself, and I am absolutely through with caring what Lucas Blackwater thinks of me. She started to walk away, but his voice caught her. If it was all a lie, why didn't you put up a bigger fight? The question sounded far more desperate than he'd intended. Why would you just surrender, serve me with divorce papers, and then just vanish? Tiffany pivoted slowly, the expression on her face causing a painful squeeze in Lucas's chest. Because you had already convicted me, she stated plainly. And there was absolutely nothing I could have said to change your verdict. You looked at me like I was a complete stranger, like our 7 years together meant nothing at all, like the woman who championed you when you were just a coder in a tiny apartment, living on instant noodles, risking everything on a long-shot dream, like she had been completely erased. Her voice fractured on the final word, and Lucas watched her swallow against the emotion. So yes, Lucas, I surrendered. I gave up on trying to prove my innocence to a man who had already authored the final chapter of our story without ever asking for my version. She blinked hard, a fierce refusal to cry. Enjoy the coffee. This time, as she walked away, he let her go. He remained frozen in the booth, staring into the black coffee he hadn't touched, while his world spun off its axis. An older woman in the corner was now scowling at him as if he'd just abused an animal. One of the truckers nearby shook his head, muttering loud enough to be heard, "Rich guys never know a good thing till they throw it away." A hot flush of shame crept up Lucas's neck. Someone went to extraordinary lengths to tear our marriage apart. You were so desperate to see the worst in me. You had already convicted me. The sentences ricocheted around his skull, growing louder with each echo. A rap on the window from his driver, followed by a thumbs up, signaled the tire was repaired. It was time to leave. Lucas got to his feet, Tiffany's words still churning relentlessly in his mind. He took out his wallet, dropping a crisp $100 bill on the table for a $5 cup of coffee he would never drink. He had to get out of there. He needed the sanctuary of his car, the retreat to his life, the return to that meticulously built reality where Tiffany Campbell was no longer a part. A world where he didn't have to replay the look in her eyes as she said, "You had already convicted me." He was inches from the door, his hand outstretched, when a voice called out, "Hey, you forgot your change." Lucas turned. Tiffany was there holding the $100 bill. Her golden kinky twists were slightly frayed, a subtle echo of the storm that had just passed between them. The inferno in her deep brown eyes still seared him, squeezing the air from his lungs. "Keep it." Lucas heard himself say the words escaping before his brain could catch them. "It's a tip. You look like you could use it." The instant the sentence ended, a cold wave of regret washed over him. A colossal mistake. Gratitude never even crossed her face. Instead, Tiffany's eyes blew wide with a rage so white-hot, so utterly pure, it physically forced Lucas a step backward. "I look like I need it," she echoed, her voice dropping to a lethal whisper. "That's not what I meant," Lucas stammered, fumbling for an apology. But she was already closing in, covering the space between them in 3 predatory strides. His mind was still catching up when she seized the lapels of his suit jacket, jamming the $100 bill back into his pocket with a force that sent him staggering. Oh, she was far from finished. Her hand plunged right back into his personal space and ripped his wallet out with a sharp, furious tug. She tore a single $5 bill from it, slammed the wallet back against his chest so hard he felt it thud against his ribs, and then crushed the 5 in her clenched fist. "The coffee is $5, she snarled, her face a breath away from his. "This is my payment for the service provided. This is what I will accept." With painstaking deliberation, she stuffed the crumpled bill into her apron, her gaze never breaking from his, a silent declaration of war. "I don't want your pity, Lucas," she hissed, the words laced with venom. "And I certainly don't need your conscience money. Keep your condescending handouts from some disconnected billionaire who thinks he can fix any problem by just throwing cash at it. What I need is for you to take your cash, your judgments, and your monumental ego and get the hell out of my life for good." The diner was a vacuum of silence once more. Every eye was glued to them, captivated by a drama far more real than anything on television. Lucas was paralyzed, the reality crashing down on him. This woman, his ex-wife, the one he had branded a traitor in his own mind, had just deftly relieved him of his money simply to prove a point. And in her righteous fury, she was absolutely magnificent. Tiffany finally retreated, her chest rising and falling with ragged, emotional breaths. Outside, the rain began to hammer against the diner's roof, the drumming sound rushing in to fill the charged silence she left behind. "Stay out of my life," she repeated, the volume gone, but the intensity burning brighter than ever. Then she turned her back on him, her spine a rod of iron, her chin held high. She left Lucas utterly stunned, his entire world fracturing like a sheet of ice underfoot. From a corner booth, an elderly woman began to clap, a slow, deliberate sound that quickly gained strength. A trucker echoed the applause, then another joined the chorus. In moments, the diner erupted in applause, a standing ovation for a woman who had just reclaimed her dignity. The heat of raw humiliation burned his face as Lucas shoved his way out of the diner and into the cleansing wash of the rain. If you believe Lucas was just served a plate of exactly what he had coming, smash that comment button with "You go, Tiffany," and make sure to subscribe, because the homecoming Lucas is about to have will shatter everything you think you know about trust. His driver stood waiting, umbrella held aloft. "Sir, are you all right? You seem—" "I'm fine," Lucas snapped, cutting him off as he ducked into the back of the car. "Just drive." Yet as the car pulled away from Rosie's diner, Lucas couldn't stop himself from staring back through the water-streaked glass. Through the downpour, he could just make out her silhouette already back on the floor, taking an order from the trucker. Her posture was perfect, her expression the model of professionalism, as if the earth-shattering confrontation had never happened. He watched her say something that drew a hearty laugh from the man at the counter. But then for a split second when she turned away, he saw it, the bone-deep weariness pulling at her shoulders. She was working two jobs. The realization wasn't a thought, it was a collision. This wasn't her only source of income. After a full shift here, she was headed somewhere else. He glanced at his watch. 7 p.m. on a Tuesday. Just how many hours was she putting in every single day? He pictured the dark circles under her eyes. He'd been too arrogant to truly see. How little sleep was she getting? How long had this been her reality? Her voice echoed in his mind. Someone went to a lot of trouble to destroy our marriage. The phrase was a ghost that wouldn't leave. It just kept circling, relentless. What if he fought it? There was proof. The pictures, the text, he had witnesses. But what if the proof was a lie? Lucas shook his head, a physical attempt to dislodge the doubt. She was getting inside his head. This was her specialty. She was always so passionate, so utterly convincing. That must have been how she hid the affair. Except that look on her face hadn't been guilt. It was pure, unadulterated rage, the certainty of the wronged. And he remembered with a jolt she had called him stupid. Against all logic, a faint smile touched his lips at the memory. It had been years since anyone had spoken to him that way. No one had the nerve. He was Lucas Blackwater, billionaire CEO. His world was composed of yes men and people who revered him. But Tiffany had stared straight into his soul and branded him spectacularly stupid. The smile vanished as quickly as it appeared, because the terrifying thought sinking in was that if she was telling the truth, if this was all an elaborate setup, then she wasn't just being cruel. She was being accurate. He wasn't just stupid, he was monumentally, catastrophically stupid. And he had single-handedly destroyed the life of an innocent woman. The very idea sent a wave of nausea through him. "We have arrived, sir," the driver announced as the car glided to a stop before a gleaming glass skyscraper in the heart of downtown Detroit, Lucas's building. Lucas emerged from the vehicle, giving the driver a curt nod of acknowledgement. He walked toward the exclusive elevator, reserved to whisk him away to his penthouse suite on the highest floor. Tiffany's voice was a relentless echo in his head. Her expression seared into his memory, fueling the poisonous doubt that had begun to seep into his soul. As the elevator doors slid open, welcoming him directly into his penthouse foyer, Lucas stepped inside, already loosening the knot of his tie, and then he stopped dead. There was music playing, a low jazzy tune he was certain he hadn't turned on. Then a scent hit him. Garlic and herbs, the distinct aroma of a meal being prepared. "Is anyone here?" Lucas called out, his hand reflexively going to his phone. "Lucas, you are finally home." From the direction of the kitchen, a woman emerged, and a fraction of the tension left Lucas's shoulders. But it was replaced by a strange, unsettling knot in his gut. It was Chantel, who was either Tiffany's former best friend or her cousin. Lucas could never quite get it straight. Their childhood bond had been so tight that the specific title always felt like a minor detail. As usual, Chantel looked absolutely breathtaking. Her flawless, deep brown skin seemed to radiate a warmth of its own, even in the soft, ambient glow of the penthouse. She sported a chic, short, tapered haircut that accentuated the graceful line of her neck and her striking high cheekbones. Standing at 5'9" with a figure that was perfectly proportioned, she carried herself with an easy self-assurance that demanded attention wherever she went. She was dressed in a pair of form-fitting jeans and a silk blouse that likely cost more than Tiffany's monthly earnings at the diner. Diamond studs flashed against her dark skin as her plush lips stretched into an inviting smile upon seeing him. "I hope this is okay," Chantel said, motioning back toward the kitchen. "I just let myself in. The security team knows me, of course. I figured you could use a real home-cooked meal instead of the takeout you're always eating." Lucas placed his briefcase on the floor, his mind struggling to catch up. "Chantel, how did you know I was coming home now? I wasn't even supposed to be here." "I have my sources," she replied with a mischievous wink, closing the distance between them. "Besides, I was getting worried about you. You've been pushing yourself to the limit lately. First the Toronto acquisition, now the expansion into Asia. Someone has to make sure you're looking after yourself." She reached out and deftly tightened the tie he had just begun to loosen. An instinct he didn't understand made Lucas take a subtle step backward. "I'm doing fine," he stated, his tone sharper than he intended. "You really didn't have to do all this." "But I wanted to." Chantel cut in, her hand resting on his chest for a heartbeat too long before she finally pulled away. "Isn't that what friends are for? We look out for one another." Friends, yes. But lately, Chantel's version of friendship had become increasingly invasive, showing up without notice. preparing his meals, reorganizing his wardrobe, and even redecorating sections of his penthouse to give it a warmer, more lived-in feel. Right after the divorce, he had found her constant presence to be a lifeline. She had been his rock through the storm, listening to him vent his fury over Tiffany's betrayal, fueling his rage and championing his decision to completely sever his ex-wife from his life. She had recounted every detail of how she attempted to warn Tiffany away from Rokoa, telling her he was nothing but trouble. She described finding the texts on Tiffany's phone and the heated confrontation that followed. She painted a picture of Tiffany just laughing it all off, complaining that Lucas was never home anyway, and that she was entitled to a little excitement. It was Chantel who had made that frantic, tearful call to him that fateful night, swearing she tried to prevent Tiffany from bringing Rocco home, but that she had been ignored. She was his star witness, the one person who confirmed he wasn't losing his mind, that the infidelity he suspected was sickeningly real. So why did her being here now make his skin crawl? "Dinner is just about done," Chantel announced, cheerfully turning back toward the kitchen. "I'm making your absolute favorite jerk chicken with rice and peas. I even swung by that place in Midtown to get that bottle of wine you love." She navigated his kitchen with an unnerving familiarity, as if it were her own pulling open cabinets without a moment's thought. She knew where every single thing was, humming softly to the jazz music as she cooked. Lucas trailed after her, his eyes fixed on her, truly observing her for the first time in a long time. "Since when did she keep her clothes here?" He spotted a sweater, unmistakably a woman's, draped over the back of a bar stool. "And were those her shoes sitting by the entryway, Chantel?" Lucas began, his voice carefully neutral. "Exactly how often have you been stopping by?" She pivoted from the stove, a wooden spoon in her hand, and offered him a radiant smile. "Oh, just a couple of times a week. I just want to ensure the place is kept up. Your housekeeper does an okay job, but she doesn't really get you, She doesn't understand that you need your books arranged alphabetically by author, or that you insist on keeping your coffee beans in the freezer, or that you can't relax if the throw pillows on the sofa are out of order." A deep, chilling sensation snaked its way down his spine. He had mentioned those preferences, yes, but in passing months ago. Chantel hadn't just remembered. She had been enforcing them, weaving herself into the very fabric of his life. "That's very considerate of you," Lucas managed to say the words, feeling hollow and strange on his tongue. "There's really no need." "But I want to," Chantel insisted, her tone leaving no room for argument. She placed her spoon on the counter and closed the distance between them, her dark eyes burning with intensity. "Lucas, you've been on your own for 3 years now. You're working yourself into an early grave, shutting out everyone, refusing to move on. Someone needs to look out for you." She raised a hand to his face, the warmth of her palm a stark contrast to the coldness in his heart. "Let me be the one to take care of you," she whispered. "You deserve a person who truly gets you, who recognizes how extraordinary you are. Someone who wouldn't just throw away everything you built together for some—" She let the sentence hang in the air, but Lucas knew exactly how to finish it. "For some cheap thrill," Lucas said gently, taking her hand from his cheek. "Chantel, I appreciate the gesture, I really do, but—" Her entire demeanor shifted, the manufactured warmth instantly evaporating. "You saw her today, didn't you? That's what this is about. You're acting strange because you saw Tiffany." Lucas's head snapped up. "How could you possibly know that?" "Your driver mentioned an unscheduled stop at a diner on the east side," Chantel said, her arms folding across her chest like a shield. "And we both know there's only one person who would drag you to that part of town. So how is she still playing the world's tiniest violin for herself?" There was a harsh, bitter undercurrent in her voice that Lucas had somehow never noticed before. Or perhaps he had, and had simply chosen to ignore it. "She's working," Lucas said, choosing his words with care, watching her reaction. "2 jobs by the looks of it." "Good," Chantal spat, and the sheer venom packed into that single word sent a chill down his spine. "She deserves every moment of her struggle after what she put you through. She threw away the single best thing that ever happened to her." Chantel stepped toward him again, and this time her movements felt predatory. "You gave her the world, Lucas, the entire world, and she brought another man into your bed. She's earned whatever miserable life she's living now." But Lucas could only picture Tiffany's calloused hands, her eyes hollowed out by exhaustion, and the fierce, unbreakable pride she wore like armor, even when she had nothing left. "I didn't do it. Someone went to a great deal of trouble to destroy my marriage. She told me it was all a setup." The words tumbled out of him before he could stop them. Chantel went completely rigid. "What? Tiffany?" She said someone engineered the whole thing. The photos, the text messages, the witnesses, she claims all of it was fabricated. A sharp, brittle laugh escaped Chantel's lips. Oh, of course she did. What did you expect her to do? She's not about to confess to what she did, Lucas. She's going to spin some wild conspiracy theory to make herself look like a saint. She sounded damn certain. Lucas countered, his eyes locked on hers. She's a liar, Chantel said, her voice flat and cold. She lied to your face for months on end. She lied when you confronted her with the proof. And she's lying to you now. Don't let her get inside your head again. She lunged forward and grabbed his hands, her grip surprisingly strong, almost frantic. I was there, Lucas. Remember, I saw what she was doing. I tried to stop her. I was the one who had to call you because I couldn't bear to watch her destroy you. Her dark eyes were wide, pleading with him to believe her. Don't let her rewrite history now just because she's finally suffering the consequences of her own betrayal. Lucas glanced down at their joined hands. Chantel's were soft and perfectly manicured, adorned with expensive rings. He thought of Tiffany's hands, cracked and rough, the hands of someone who worked until they were raw. Right, Lucas said quietly, carefully pulling his hands from her clutch. Of course. But a seed of doubt had been planted, and it was already taking root. Chantel had been too quick with her denials, too vehement in her insistence that Tiffany was a pathological liar. And she had made herself entirely too comfortable in his house, moving with an air of ownership, as if she'd just been waiting for this opening, positioning herself to take over where Tiffany had left off. Actually, I'm not that hungry, Lucas said suddenly. I think I've got some work I need to finish up. You should probably... I'll wait, Chantel chirped, the dark intensity vanishing in an instant. I'll just keep dinner warm. You do what you have to do, and we can eat together when you're done. Like always. Like always. When had their dynamic become an always? Lucas gave a slow nod and turned toward his study, feeling her gaze on his back the entire way. He shut the door behind him and leaned against the solid wood, his mind a whirlwind of confusion. Something was terribly wrong. It was like a detail in a painting he'd stared at for years, a glaring mistake he'd been too blind to ever see until now. Chantel had been his anchor through everything. The initial confrontation, the brutal divorce, the hollow emptiness that followed. She had been the one to place the call that night, shattering his world. She had been the one to show him the incriminating text. She had been the voice of reason that confirmed his deepest, ugliest fears about Tiffany. And now she stood in his kitchen, offering to care for him, ready to fill a void she had helped create. Someone went to a great deal of trouble to destroy my marriage. Lucas crossed to his desk and opened his laptop. His fingers hovered over the keyboard for a long, heavy moment. Then he started to type, how to tell if digital evidence has been tampered with. He had no idea what he was looking for or if he would find anything at all. But Tiffany's accusation kept replaying in his mind. And Chantel's reaction moments ago, that flicker of pure terror when he mentioned the setup, spoke volumes. Lucas had forged his empire on deciphering data, on identifying patterns, on perceiving the truths that everyone else overlooked. And right now, a horrifying pattern was taking shape, one that sent a chill straight to his core. From behind his study door, he could hear Chantel's soft humming from the kitchen, a sound of someone utterly at ease, someone who felt they had a right to be there. It was the sound of victory. Lucas swiveled to his monitor, resurrecting the ghost of his divorce, the investigator's entire file, the damning photographs, the precise timeline of betrayal. And for the first time in 3 years, he began to examine it all through a new lens. He wasn't the shattered husband blinded by betrayal anymore. He was an analyst, relentlessly pursuing the truth regardless of where it led. Chantel has made herself at home in Lucas's house, cooking his favorite dishes and bristling with defensiveness at the mere mention of Tiffany's name. If every instinct you have is screaming that there is something deeply wrong with our entire situation, I need you to drop a comment saying Chantel is suspicious and absolutely smash that subscribe button, because we're jumping 3 years into the past to conduct our own investigation. Together, let's expose what truly went down. 3 years earlier, the Blackwater penthouse in downtown Detroit stood as a monument to modern architecture, with walls of glass offering a panoramic view of the Detroit River. Its marble floors echoed with solitude, and the sprawling space was large enough to comfortably shelter 3 separate families. Yet tonight, like so many nights before, it felt less like a sanctuary and more like a beautifully appointed prison cell. Tiffany Blackwater stood before those massive windows, a lone figure watching the city lights glitter against the encroaching darkness. Her own reflection stared back at her, a spectral image. Her golden kinky twist, styled only yesterday, cascaded down her back in thick, lustrous ropes. The silk robe she wore, a gift from Lucas on their 5th anniversary, draped over her body, a soft, expensive piece of fabric that did nothing to ward off the profound cold that had settled deep within her bones. It was the chill of a lonely bed, a cavernous penthouse, a hollow marriage. Her phone vibrated on the kitchen island, and Tiffany's heart leaped with a frantic, desperate hope as she rushed to answer its call. "Lucas, the deal is running late. I won't be home for dinner. My apologies. Love you." Tiffany's eyes remained fixed on the text for a long while before she placed the phone down with a slow, deliberate motion, as if the slightest jolt might cause her to completely fall apart. This marked the 3rd dinner he had bailed on this week, the 7th one this month. She glanced at the dining table she had arranged with such loving care. The candles were lit. His favorite dish was being kept warm in the oven. She'd spent an entire hour choosing a bottle of wine, wanting every single detail to be perfect for his return. Only he wasn't returning. Not again. Tiffany extinguished the candles one by one, watching the smoke drift towards the high ceiling, making a silent promise to herself that she would not cry. She was just so very tired of crying. "Girl, you need to pull yourself together and start living." Chantel swept into the penthouse as if she held the deed, which in some ways she practically did these days. With a string of successful fashion boutiques that brought in thousands of dollars each week, Chantel could afford a home of her own anywhere she pleased. But she had taken up residence in the guest suite for the last month, ever since Tiffany confessed how isolating the penthouse felt in Lucas's absence. It was a testament to her love. Or at the very least, that's the narrative Chantel wanted Tiffany to accept. "I'm not moping," Tiffany replied, though her entire demeanor suggested otherwise. "I'm just waiting." "Waiting for what?" "For Lucas to remember he has a wife." Chantel tossed her designer handbag onto the counter and headed for the kitchen, uncorking the wine Tiffany had been saving for a special occasion. "Honey, I adore you, but you have to wake up. That man is married to his company, not to you." "That isn't fair," Tiffany countered, but her voice held no real strength. "He's working tirelessly to build a future for us." "What future?" Chantel poured 2 generous glasses and passed one to Tiffany. "The one where you're 60 years old, still eating by yourself while he's off finalizing deals in Singapore." Tiffany accepted the wine but let it sit untouched. "He promised that things would ease up after this Tokyo expansion. It's just a few more months." "He said that 6 months ago," Chantel interjected gently, "and 6 months before that, and 6 months before that." She settled onto the sofa and patted the space beside her. "Tiff, I'm not trying to be harsh. I'm trying to be honest because I love you, and I can't bear to see you wasting away in this magnificent prison." Tiffany sank down onto the couch beside her cousin. They had been raised so closely they were more like sisters. Their mothers were twins who had done everything in unison, including raising their daughters as a single unit. Chantel was the nearest thing to a sibling Tiffany had ever had. "I just miss him," Tiffany whispered. "I miss who we were back when we were broke and struggling, but so happy. When he would look at me as if I was his entire universe." Chantel's hand covered hers, giving it a gentle squeeze. "I know, honey, I know." But what Tiffany missed, what she was incapable of seeing, was the flash of ice in Chantel's eyes. A chilling flicker of calculation that vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced once more by a mask of warm sympathy. Because Chantel remembered that time all too well. The era before the money, when Lucas was just another face in the crowd. She could still smell the stale coffee from that cramped midtown cafe where she'd made the fatal mistake of introducing him to Tiffany. He was supposed to be hers. She'd spotted him first, charmed him at some dull tech mixer, and felt a thrill when he asked for her number. She was just waiting for the right moment to make her move. But then Tiffany had floated into that coffee shop, a whirlwind of radiant smiles and cascading golden hair, her laughter filling the small space. And Lucas had stared at her as if he'd just witnessed a sunrise for the first time. He had never once looked at Chantel that way. In fact, nobody had. She was the beautiful one, the sophisticated one. She could stop traffic and break hearts without a second thought. Yet whenever Tiffany was present, it was as if Chantel became a ghost. It had been the inescapable pattern of their entire lives. Teachers would gush over Tiffany's chaotic, brilliant art, completely overlooking the perfection of Chantel's work. Boys would stumble over themselves to get Tiffany's number while Chantel stood right beside her, invisible. Every scholarship, every opportunity seemed to fall effortlessly into Tiffany's lap, while Chantel had to bleed for every single scrap she got. And now Tiffany had the ultimate prize, Lucas. Lucas, the man who had just spun a $6 billion empire out of thin air. The man who could give any woman the entire world. The man who should have belonged to Chantel, who would have belonged to her if Tiffany hadn't simply taken him. You know what you need, Chantel said, her voice a cheerful melody designed to conceal the acidic bitterness rising in her throat. A real night out. The charity gala is this weekend, the one you've poured your soul into for months. You are going to slip into your most devastating dress. We will sip champagne that costs more than my rent, and you are going to be reminded that you are Tiffany Blackwater and you are utterly magnificent. A faint, weary smile touched Tiffany's lips. I'm not exactly in a celebratory mood. Who mentioned a celebration? Darling, this is a declaration. This is about proving to everyone that you are so much more than Lucas Blackwater's neglected wife. You are a visionary, a philanthropist, a force of nature. Chantel's grin was sharp. And besides, I have someone I'm dying for you to meet. He's just in town for a couple of weeks, and I think the two of you would find each other fascinating. Someone? Tiffany's eyebrow arched with suspicion. Chantel, I'm married. Oh, please, she scoffed. It's just a friendly chat. His name is Rocco. We worked on a marketing campaign together years ago. He's brilliant. He's hilarious. And he has a unique gift for making a woman feel truly seen. Chantel gave Tiffany's hand a conspiratorial squeeze. Not like that. It's just, you could use a person who actually sees you, someone who pays attention. Every instinct Tiffany possessed should have screamed no. The red flags were practically a parade. But the loneliness was a chasm inside her, a desperate hunger for any kind of acknowledgement. Fine, she finally sighed. One night, but I'm not. I know. You're the loyal, devoted wife who would never stray. Chantel smiled, and this time the coldness in her gaze was almost tangible. Trust me, Tiff, I know exactly who you are. If you're already getting a sinking feeling about Chantel, and you need to warn Tiffany, smash that comment section with, "It's a trap, Tiffany." And make sure you're subscribed because the events of this gala are about to set off an explosion and you will not want to miss the fallout. The charity gala was a spectacle of opulence held within the hallowed halls of the Pfizer building, a true jewel of Detroit's architecture. The grand ballroom was ablaze with the light of crystal chandeliers. Champagne cascaded from fountains, and the city's most powerful figures drifted through the room in a haze of haute couture. Tiffany navigated the glittering sea of people with a polished, almost robotic grace. She was a masterpiece in an emerald green gown that caressed her figure and set her deep brown skin aglow. Her golden kinky twists were swept elegantly over one shoulder. Her makeup was minimal, just a hint of eyeliner and gloss that gave her an air of natural, breathtaking beauty. She smiled at benefactors, offered gratitude to sponsors, and posed for an endless stream of photographs. She was the very picture of the perfect billionaire's wife, all while knowing her husband was 7,000 miles away in Tokyo, probably not thinking of her at all. You look like you're in agony, Chantel murmured, appearing at her elbow with two champagne flutes. I look fine, Tiffany countered automatically. You look like a hostage trying to smile for a proof-of-life photo. Chantel forced a glass into her hand. Drink, unclench, and come meet Rocco. He has been absolutely dying to be introduced to the infamous Tiffany Blackwater. Before Tiffany could even begin to object, Chantel was guiding her firmly across the ballroom, straight toward a man who was leaning against the bar. And Tiffany had to admit, with a detached sort of objectivity, that Rocco Bellini was undeniably handsome. He was tall, around 6 feet, with a lean athletic frame that his bespoke tuxedo showcased to perfection. His warm caramel complexion seemed to absorb the ballroom's golden light, and he possessed captivating hazel eyes that crinkled at the edges when he smiled. He sported a sharp, clean fade and a meticulously sculpted goatee that accentuated a jawline so strong it looked like it was cut from granite. Tiffany, I present to you Rocco, Chantel announced with a theatrical sweep of her hand. Rocco, this is my cousin who is basically my sister, the one and only Tiffany. Rocco reached for her hand, his smile radiating a potent, well-practiced charm. Mrs. Blackwater, it's a genuine pleasure. Chantel never stopped singing your praises. She accepted his handshake, a polite formality, but couldn't ignore the way his grip lingered a second too long, the unnerving intensity of his gaze. So Rocco, how did you and Chantel meet? Tiffany asked, trying to place him. Oh, we go way back, he answered, his voice impossibly smooth. Worked on a project together years ago. A marketing gig for some big hotel chain. Chantel was the brains of the operation, of course. I just brought the charm. His laugh was a carefully crafted piece of self-deprecation designed to disarm. It did the opposite. A tiny alarm bell started ringing somewhere deep inside Tiffany. Everything about him felt staged, like he was playing a part. But Chantel was looking on beaming as if she'd just handed Tiffany the world on a silver platter. Not wanting to cause a scene, Tiffany fell back on the polite script. Well, anyone Chantel trusts is a friend of mine, she offered, the words feeling hollow. So, are you having a good time tonight? The conversation that followed was brief. A forgettable blur of pleasantries, the elegance of the venue, the quality of the orchestra, the importance of the charity they were all there to support. Rocco was the epitome of charm, but his focus on her was suffocating an unwavering attention that felt more like a spotlight than a conversation. He laughed at everything she said a little too loudly, his body angled toward hers with a practiced precision, a sunflower tracking its star. His hand would find her arm as he emphasized a point, and when a waiter brushed by, his palm rested on the small of her back for a moment too long. Each move was subtle, perfectly calculated. He was a professional. Because Rocco Bellini wasn't a marketing guy. He was an actor, and not a particularly successful one, the kind who'd take any role if the price was right. And Chantel was making it very, very right. After about 20 minutes of this performance, Rocco leaned in. You seem a little on edge, his voice dropping to an intimate whisper. Let me get you a refill. Only then did Tiffany notice the empty flute in her hand. When had she finished it, the memory wasn't there. I'm okay, she managed, but a strange fuzziness was already creeping into the edges of her thoughts. Actually, I really should make my rounds. There are some donors I need to connect with. Just one more, Chantel insisted, materializing at her elbow with a fresh glass of champagne. You've been working this room for 2 hours, Tiff. Relax for a second. Talk to Rocco. I promise he doesn't bite. With a brilliant smile, she pushed the flute into Tiffany's hand. And Tiffany, exhausted, feeling adrift, and secretly craving the simple validation of being seen, took the glass. She missed the way Chantel's thumb grazed the rim. She didn't see the faint, milky swirl that clouded the golden liquid for just a second. And she certainly didn't catch the flicker of triumph that passed between Chantel and Rocco, a silent, predatory acknowledgement right above her head. So Tiffany drank. And the next 30 minutes dissolved into a dangerous haze. A primal alarm was screaming inside her, a sense that something was deeply wrong, but the specifics were just out of reach. The air in the ballroom thickened, growing impossibly hot. The chandeliers blazed with an unbearable intensity. Every inch of her skin began to tingle, a pins and needles sensation that felt like every nerve ending was igniting. And Rocco, he was suddenly transformed, impossibly handsome, utterly magnetic. His smile sent a wave of liquid heat through her chest. The barest brush of his hand against her arm sent a jolt of pure electricity through her. This is not right. A tiny, rational corner of her mind shrieked. You don't know him. You love Lucas. This is wrong, so wrong. But her body had staged a coup, completely deaf to the frantic protests of her brain. Hey, are you all right? Rocco's voice seemed to come from a great distance, his face blurring at the edges. You're looking a little flushed. I don't... Tiffany's own words felt foreign, her tongue a leaden, useless thing in her mouth. Something's not right. I need to sit. Here, I've got you. His arms snaked around her waist, solid and strong, and she found herself collapsing against him, her own will gone. His touch was a brand, a current, a dangerous craving she couldn't fight, even as the last sane part of her screamed no. Chantel! The name was a desperate whisper as her eyes scanned the swimming shapes of the crowd. Where is she? I need her. I'm right here, sweetie. Chantel was suddenly at her other side, her voice a perfect mask of concern. Oh, honey, you look awful. Let's get you outside. Together, they guided her toward the doors, a silent procession, through a sea of curious stares out of the grand ballroom and into the relative quiet of the hall. After that, everything shattered. Her memory became a collection of broken pieces, intense sensations with no story to connect them. The shocking bite of the cold night air, the dizzying, cloying scent of Rocco's cologne, the feeling of being gently pushed down into the plush leather of a car's back seat. His eyes found hers in the darkness, and then his mouth was on hers, and Tiffany kissed him back. She kissed him because her body was a raging inferno, because her mind had gone silent, because the world had dissolved into a foggy, surreal dream from which there was no waking. A ghost of her former self screamed in protest, knowing this was a betrayal, knowing the self-loathing that would follow, knowing this wasn't her. But the ghost had no power here. She couldn't stop. She didn't even want to. Whatever poison Chantel had slipped into her champagne had burned away everything but the want. Meanwhile, in an anonymous hotel room across town, not the glamorous penthouse, but a standard double Chantel had secured with a fake name. Chantel lounged on the bed, watching Rocco wear a path in the cheap carpet. "Are you absolutely certain this is going to work?" he demanded, raking his hands through his artfully messy hair. "I can't do this, Chantel. The whole thing feels twisted," Rocco stammered. Having second thoughts, Chantel's voice sliced through the air. "Now, after I've already put $5,000 in your pocket," that was before I realized what she's actually like. Rocco shot back his hands, fluttering nervously. "You described some kind of monster, a spoiled, arrogant witch who took what was yours. But she's not that. She's just a profoundly lonely woman who's desperate for her husband to come home." Chantel rose to her feet, and the venom in her gaze forced Rocco to retreat a step. "Let me tell you the truth about my dear cousin Tiffany." Chantel hissed, her voice a low, dangerous whisper. "She has been a shadow eclipsing my entire life. Every single opportunity, every achievement, any man who ever gave me a second glance, she would just waltz in and it would all become hers, effortlessly. She doesn't even realize she does it. She just exists and the world falls at her feet." She stalked toward Rocco, her eyes glowing with a lifetime of buried rage. "I was the one who introduced her to Lucas. He was supposed to fall for me. I saw him first. I started the conversation. I was the one who gave him my number." And then Tiffany floated into the room with that radiant smile and her perfect hair, and in an instant, he looked straight through me as if I were made of glass. A fracture appeared in Chantel's voice, and for a fleeting second, the villain receded, replaced by the ghost of a wounded child. "Do you have any idea what it's like to spend your life as the runner-up, to watch someone else be handed everything that should have been yours without them even having to ask? To force a smile while your entire soul is screaming in agony?" Rocco stood motionless, the air thick with his own suffocating discomfort. "Lucas belonged with me," Chantel whispered, her voice laced with chilling conviction. "This life was meant for me, and I will not stand by and watch her squander it any longer. Not when she doesn't value any of it, complaining into my ear or every chance she gets about how hard it all is. I have reached my limit." She drew herself up, and the brief flicker of vulnerability vanished behind a mask of chilling resolve. "So are you going to finish this job? Or do I need to make a phone call and remind some very unpleasant people about your outstanding debts?" Rocco swallowed the sound loud in the quiet room. "What is it you want me to do?" "Oh, the hard part's already done." Chantel purred, a triumphant smirk, twisting her lips. "You kissed her, and she kissed you. The rest is simply a matter of presentation." "What the hell does that mean?" "It means we are taking her back to her gilded cage. You will lie down in bed next to her. You'll remain fully dressed, nothing more, while I document the scene. I'll take some photographs that strongly suggest the aftermath of a passionate night." Chantel held up her phone as if it were a weapon. "Then you will vanish. I will place a call to Lucas in Tokyo, and the ensuing chaos will take care of everything else." "And her," Rocco asked. "What happens when she wakes up and swears to Lucas that it was only a kiss?" "She won't remember it that clearly. Trust me, the little something I slipped into her drink creates memory gaps and deep confusion. She'll awaken with hazy fragments of being with you, but all the crucial details will be lost in a fog." Chantel's smile turned predatory. "And when she is confronted with those photos, seeing herself in bed with a man she barely knows, her own fractured memory will lead her to assume the very worst. She will convince herself that she betrayed her husband completely." Rocco could only stare at her, his expression a mask of dawning horror. That's diabolical." "No," she corrected him coolly. "That's justice." Chantel moved toward the exit. "Come on, we have a marriage to utterly destroy." An unnerving silence hung over the Blackwater penthouse as Chantel and Rocco maneuvered Tiffany's limp, barely responsive body through the grand entryway. "The master bedroom is this way," Chantel directed, her tone now detached and all business. "Be gentle with her. We can't have any marks, nothing that could be questioned." They carefully placed Tiffany upon the enormous bed she shared with Lucas, the mattress still holding the faint masculine scent of his cologne. The very bed where she had wept through so many lonely nights. Chantel went to work with a chilling precision, unbuttoning Tiffany's blouse just enough to be suggestive. She rumpled the sheets to create an illusion of passion, then took a finger and deliberately smudged Tiffany's makeup onto Rocco's shirt. "All right, you're up," Chantel instructed Rocco. "Get in beside her. I want you close but not touching, as if you've just woken up and rolled away." Rocco hesitated, his eyes drawn to Tiffany's still face. Even in her drugged oblivion, fresh tears were glistening on her cheeks. It was as if some conscious part of her understood the violation, as if her soul was still fighting. "She's crying," Rocco whispered in horror. "Lie down." Resigned, Rocco complied, positioning his body next to Tiffany's in a perfect, damning tableau of counterfeit intimacy. His face hovered near hers. One of his arms was draped across the space between them, his hand suspended just over her shoulder. Chantel raised her phone and began snapping pictures, the camera flash cutting through the dim romantic lighting of the room. "Move your hand a fraction of an inch closer to her face. Good. Now look at her as if she's the only thing in the world that matters. Perfect." She took no fewer than 20 photos, reviewing each one with a cold, critical eye. When she was finally satisfied, she gave Rocco a sharp nod. "Now get out. Use the service elevator at the end of the hall. There are no security cameras in that corridor. And remember your story if anyone ever asks you." And Tiffany had been seeing each other for months. "You met at an art gallery. You bought her sob story about a loveless marriage. Now, if you deviate from my story, I will personally deliver your location to every person you owe money to." A saccharine smile spread across Chantel's lips. "Don't you worry, Rocco. You played your role perfectly. Now get out of my sight." Rocco didn't need to be told twice. He scrambled away, every footfall a sigh of pure relief. Alone in the sprawling penthouse, Chantel gazed down at the woman on the bed. Her cousin, but in truth the only sister she had ever known, now lying there oblivious. For a fleeting second the mask slipped, a flicker of guilt, a pang of regret, the ghost of the girl who used to whisper secrets in the dark with the very woman she was about to destroy. Just as quickly it vanished, leaving behind nothing but icy resolve. "I truly am sorry," Tiff Chantel murmured, the words like poison on her tongue. "But you were handed the life I deserved, and you're too blind to even see it." Her phone felt heavy in her hand as she scrolled, her thumb stopping on a single name, Lucas. She drew a sharp breath, willed the tears to well in her eyes, and placed the call. It was 3 a.m. in Tokyo. Lucas picked up on the fourth ring, his voice thick and disoriented with sleep. "Chantel, what is it? Is it Tiffany?" The name hung in the air. This was her cue. Chantel shattered her voice into a perfect imitation of despair. She crafted the sound of a woman utterly broken by what she had just seen. "Lucas, oh God, I'm so sorry. I tried to warn her, but she refused to listen. She brought a man here, to your home, to your bed." A dead silence hung on the line. Then his voice, thick with confusion, asked, "What are you talking about? Who did Tiffany bring home?" Now Chantel let the tears fall freely, genuine tears, born not of sorrow, but of pure, unadulterated triumph. "She's been having an affair, Lucas, with a man named Rocco. I've spent weeks trying to make her see sense to end it. But tonight she brought him into your home. I just came to check on her and I walked in on them." "Stop." Lucas's voice sliced through the phone, sharp and lethal. "What do you mean you found them in my bedroom?" Chantel let out a gut-wrenching sob. "Together. I took pictures. I knew you would never believe me if I didn't have proof. And I am so sorry, Lucas. I never wanted to be the one to bring you this pain. Send them." His command was flat, devoid of emotion. "What?" "The pictures. Send them to me. Now." For a single delicious moment, Chantel's finger hovered over the screen. This was the precipice, the point of no return. She pressed send. A deafening silence stretched across the ocean, spanning the 7,000 miles that separated Detroit from Tokyo. Through the receiver, Chantel could hear him breathing shallow, ragged gasps, like a man who had just been disemboweled. "I'm on the next flight out." Lucas finally stated, his voice so unnervingly calm it could only mean he was drowning in a storm of emotion. "Do not let her leave that apartment. And she can't know you spoke to me." "Lucas, wait," she interjected. "There's something else. I have their text messages. Weeks of them. But you have to promise me, please. Don't let Tiffany know they came from me. She will despise me. She will never speak to me again." "Send them from an anonymous number," Lucas commanded, his voice as unforgiving as granite. "I don't want her to trace them back." "Not right away." "Are you sure?" she asked, feigning concern. "Just do it, Chantel. And then as far as you're concerned, this call never happened." In the gloom of the penthouse, Chantel smiled. "Of course, Lucas. Anything for you." She ended the call, and her eyes fell once more on Tiffany's sleeping form. "Sweet dreams, cousin," she whispered into the quiet. "Because when you wake up, your entire world will be ash." The wheels of Lucas's private jet touched down on the Detroit tarmac at 6 a.m. the following morning. Sleep had been impossible. Food was unthinkable. He had spent the entire flight staring at the images on his phone, searing every damning detail into his memory as his heart fractured into a million tiny shards. His mind raced desperately, grasping for any other explanation. A misunderstanding, Chantel being mistaken about what she saw. Perhaps the pictures weren't what they seemed, but each time he forced himself to look again, the truth was undeniable. There was Tiffany lost in sleep, partially unclothed, and next to her a man, so close their bodies nearly touching with an easy familiarity that screamed of history, of a profound betrayal. But beneath the crushing weight of heartbreak, another feeling began to stir. It was an old wound, one that had been festering for years. The insidious whisper that had haunted him his whole life. You were never good enough for her. Lucas had come from nothing. Not just poor, destitute. The kind of poverty that meant empty stomachs at night and cardboard stuffed shoes, a constant target for the scorn of children who had everything he didn't. He had clawed his way out of that gutter, forging an empire from sheer intellect, relentless drive, and a burning, desperate need to prove his own worth. Yet in the deepest, most guarded corners of his soul, that old feeling of worthlessness clung to him. All the money in the world couldn't erase the scars left by a lifetime of being treated like he was invisible. He had always been waiting for the day Tiffany would finally wake up and realize she could do so much better. She was radiant, gifted, a beacon of warmth. The world was at her feet. She could have had any man she wanted. Why on earth did she settle for him, especially now when he was more of a ghost in their home than a husband always consumed by work? He had been so obsessed with constructing a fortress of wealth that he'd completely neglected to build a foundation for their marriage. It was a compulsion. He had to amass a fortune so vast that the specter of poverty could never touch him again. And now those photographs served as the brutal confirmation of his deepest-seated fear. She had found another man, one who was present, one who gave her the attention she craved, someone whose world didn't revolve around closing the next deal. In a way, he had been anticipating this his entire life, but that foreboding did nothing to diminish the inferno of rage now consuming him. By the time the town car slid to a halt in front of their building, a venomous brew of fury, betrayal, and self-disgust coursed through Lucas. It was the kind of poisonous cocktail that pushed good men toward terrible decisions. The elevator ride to the penthouse was a silent ascent into hell. He stalked through the foyer he'd once filled with roses for her, past the kitchen where she used to spin and hum while making coffee, and shoved open the door to their bedroom. Tiffany was conscious, but just barely. She was perched on the edge of the mattress, her head buried in her hands, as if trying to keep it from splitting in two. She wore nothing but her lingerie, the emerald gown from the gala lying in a crumpled heap on the floor nearby. Her radiant golden twists were a tangled, chaotic mess, and streaks of makeup painted a tragic picture across her face. Her head snapped up as the door swung open, and those deep brown eyes, the same eyes he'd lost himself in for 7 years, widened with a disorienting mix of shock and confusion. Lucas, her voice was a ragged sandpaper whisper. What are you doing here, I thought. Tokyo. How did... Her words died in her throat as jagged pieces of the night before slammed into her consciousness. Rocco's face swimming in and out of focus. The overpowering scent of his cologne, the pressure of his lips on hers, the horrifying memory of kissing him back. The fog, the feverish heat, the sickening, inexplicable pull. A wave of pure horror washed over Tiffany's features as the fragments began to lock into place. They were just slivers of memory moments without context, but it was more than enough to make her stomach revolt. Lucas, she breathed, her hand flying to her mouth. Oh God, oh my God, where is he? Lucas's voice was lethally quiet, each word a perfectly sculpted piece of ice. Where is the man you brought into my home? She blinked, her confused gaze darting from his face to their bed, her brow furrowed in a desperate search. But there was no one. Just her, the ravaged sheets, and the dress on the floor she had no memory of shedding. What are you talking about? He silenced her by thrusting his phone into her face. The image was undeniable, her wrapped in another man's arms, the flash illuminating the betrayal. She stared horrified. No, I didn't. That can't be real. But a venomous whisper echoed in her skull. You kissed him, though. How do you know you didn't bring him back here? I don't know. I can't remember, she stammered, hot tears finally breaking free. Lucas, something happened last night. Something was wrong with me. I can't piece it all together. There was champagne, and then I felt so strange. Her voice broke, unable to confront what that might mean, what she might have become. And then what? The question was a raw tear in his composure. And then you brought him here, to our home, to our bed. I don't know. The words were torn from her in a gut-wrenching, ugly sob that shook her entire body. I remember kissing him. She confessed, the words tasting like ash. I don't know why. I didn't want to, but it was like I couldn't stop. After that, everything is a blur until I woke up here. I swear I don't know what happened, Lucas. I am so sorry. She stumbled toward him, her hand outstretched, desperate. But Lucas recoiled as if her touch would burn him. Don't touch me. The words were barely a whisper, but they hit her with the force of a scream. Please, Tiffany begged. Her legs gave out, and she collapsed to her knees before him. Please, Lucas, I don't understand what happened. I think somebody put something in my drink. I have never felt like that in my life. I couldn't control my own body. That's convenient, Lucas shot back, his laugh a bitter, broken sound. Blame the booze, blame some mystery drug. Blame anything at all, so long as you don't have to take responsibility. I am taking responsibility, Tiffany cried, looking up at him, her face a mess of tears and mascara. Her golden hair was a chaotic halo around her trembling shoulders. I'm telling you, I kissed him. I don't remember anything else, but I remember that, and I will not lie to you. But Lucas, you have to believe me. Something was wrong. That person, that wasn't me. I would never, but you did. Lucas's voice was suddenly hollow, scraped clean of all emotion. You just admitted it yourself. You kissed another man. In our home, probably in our bed. He turned his back on her, his massive shoulders trembling with the effort of holding himself together. I was building an empire for us, he said, his voice dangerously low. I was working 18-hour days, missing birthdays, missing holidays, absolutely killing myself to give you everything you could ever imagine. And the entire time I wasn't doing anything. Tiffany scrambled back to her feet, desperate. Last night was the first time I ever even met Rocco. Chantel introduced us at the party. I don't even know him. Lucas went completely still. Chantel introduced you, yes. She said he was an old friend of hers. She kept handing me glasses of champagne. And then I started to feel so strange. Tiffany's eyes widened as a horrifying new possibility began to dawn. Lucas? Lucas, what if Chantel... Don't! He spun around, his dark eyes blazing with a new kind of fury. Don't you dare try to blame Chantel for this. She has stopped himself abruptly, his jaw snapping shut as if he'd said far too much. She what? Tiffany asked slowly. Lucas's jaw was a knot of stone. He'd given Chantel his word that he would never reveal that she was the one who sent the photos, that she was the one who had tipped him off. She was sick with the fear that he would despise her. Nothing, he clipped out, his voice a flat line. Get your clothes on. We have to figure out where we go from here. Where we go from here. Tiffany clutched at his arm. Lucas, I messed up. I made a catastrophic mistake, and I can't even piece together how it happened. But I love you. It has only ever been you. We can get past this. We can talk to someone. I need time. Lucas wrenched his arm from her grasp. I need to think. I can't even stand to look at you right now without seeing it. The sentence died on his lips. He couldn't force the words out, couldn't speak past the image of another man's hands on her skin, without his mind conjuring up what else might have happened, without the sensation of his heart being torn clean from his chest. I'll be in the guest room, Lucas announced into the silence. We'll talk when I'm capable of it. And with that, he walked out, abandoning Tiffany in her underwear, surrounded by the debris of her own betrayal, and tormented by a black hole where the memory of her crime should have been. And that chasm of not knowing, that cancerous uncertainty, felt infinitely worse than any confession. The following 6 months were a slow, grinding death. Lucas never filed the papers. That single fact was a lifeline, and Tiffany clung to it like a woman pulled under by the tide. He didn't banish her from the house, freeze her accounts, or expose her failure to the world. He just went numb. After several weeks, he even moved back into their bedroom, but a chasm remained. He never reached for her, never kissed her, and only ever looked at her with a kind of cold, detached calculation. It was as if he was constantly doing the math to determine if she was worth the agony. Tiffany tried every conceivable way to mend the fracture between them. Any attempt to discuss what had occurred was met with a swift, brutal shutdown from Lucas. She pleaded for couples counseling. He offered a vague, "I'll think about it," and the topic was never mentioned again. She prepared the meals he once craved, wore the dresses he used to adore, doing everything in her power to summon the ghosts of the couple they were before their world shattered. Lucas ate her offerings in dead silence and let his gaze slide over her outfits as if she were a piece of furniture. He behaved like she was a tenant he was stuck with, not the wife he had vowed to love. And through every moment of it, Chantel was there. You have to give him space, Chantel would murmur, patting Tiffany's hand with practiced sympathy. He's just trying to process it all. He'll come back to you. It's been 4 months, Chantel. He looks right through me and refuses to let me explain. But what is there left to explain? Chantel's voice was a soft caress, but the question landed like a shard of glass. You admitted you kissed someone else. You told him you completely lost control. What more is there to say? Tiffany couldn't answer. Guilt coiled in her stomach. She had no defense. That night was still a chaotic fog in her mind. She couldn't grasp how she had transitioned from a loving wife to a cheater in the span of just a few hours. She couldn't silence the deep-seated intuition that some fundamental part of the story was terribly wrong. But with no evidence, no proof, and no memory to speak of, what could she possibly do? Maybe you should think about letting him go, Chantel proposed one evening, her tone laced with poisonous pity. He isn't happy, Tiff. That's obvious to anyone. And you're just torturing yourself. Maybe the kindest thing for the both of you would be to just know. Tiffany's voice cut her off sharp and final. I am not giving up on my marriage. I made a mistake. A devastating mistake. But I am not walking away from this without putting up a fight. Chantel nodded slowly, her expression a mask of perfect understanding. Behind her eyes, though, frustration was boiling over. 6 months. She had predicted Lucas would have thrown Tiffany to the curb in a matter of weeks. She'd assumed divorce papers would be served within the first month. By now, she was supposed to be comforting a devastated and newly available Lucas, but he was refusing to let go. After everything, the photographs, Tiffany's own tearful confession, he was still holding on. Chantel knew she had to apply more pressure. 6 months and 3 days after the gala, Tiffany resolved to make one final desperate bid to save her marriage. She waited for the late evening when Lucas was barricaded in his study with contracts and dressed with intention not to seduce but to remind him of the Tiffany he had once fallen for. A simple sundress, the barest hint of makeup, her golden kinky twists cascading freely over her shoulders. She knocked softly on his study door. Come in. Lucas's voice was hollow and preoccupied. Tiffany eased the door open to find him just as she'd imagined, fortified behind his enormous desk, the glow of his laptop illuminating his face, reading glasses perched on his nose. He looked worn down, older than his 33 years, as if the weight of the last 6 months had aged him a decade. Can we talk? Tiffany's voice was barely a whisper. Lucas's eyes flicked up and then immediately back down to his screen. I'm in the middle of something. Lucas, please. Something in her raw plea finally broke through his wall. He froze, and for the first time in an age, he truly saw her. Tiffany's heart pounded as she stepped closer. I know you're still furious with me. I know how much I've hurt you, and I know I have no right to ask you to forgive me when I can't even remember exactly what I did. She sank into the chair across from him, pressing her hands together in her lap to stop them from betraying her with their shaking. But I need you to believe me when I say that whatever happened that night was a terrible, unexplainable mistake that I will spend the rest of my life regretting. This wasn't planned. It wasn't something I wanted. I have no feelings for Rocco. I don't even know the man. Lucas remained perfectly still, his expression a complete void behind his glasses. I love you, Tiffany, pressed on her, voice fracturing. From the moment I met you, I've loved you. I loved you when you had nothing, coding day and night in that tiny, cramped apartment. I loved you through the 80-hour work weeks, even when you forgot our anniversary. I loved you when you were 7,000 miles away and I barely heard from you. Tears were carving tracks down her cheeks, but she just pushed through them. I know I screwed up. I know how much I hurt you, but please, Lucas, don't destroy everything we have because of one night. A horrible, blurry night I can't even piece together. I am on my knees here begging you. Forgive me. Please just give us another chance. For a long, heavy moment, Lucas was motionless. Then with deliberate slowness, he took off his glasses and placed them on the desk. And when his eyes finally met hers, Tiffany saw something she hadn't seen in months. A raw, devastating agony that ripped right through her. I want to forgive you, Lucas said, his voice barely a whisper. You can't imagine how badly I want to. I want to believe this was all just some horrible mistake. A single night, a catastrophic lapse in judgment, a spark of hope ignited in Tiffany's chest. But I can't. Lucas's voice turned to ice, because it wasn't just one night. The blood drained from Tiffany's face. What are you talking about? Lucas said nothing, just opened his desk drawer and withdrew a manila folder. His hand shook as he slid it across the polished wood toward her. These showed up 2 weeks after the gala, he said. No name attached. I've been sitting on them this whole time trying to make sense of it, trying to tell myself they couldn't possibly be real. Tiffany's fingers fumbled with the clasp. She opened it, and her world stopped turning. It was filled with screenshots, dozens of them, text messages from her number to one she'd never seen before. I can't get you out of my head. Last night was incredible. When can I see you again? My husband has no idea how to appreciate me. Not the way you do. Riverside Hotel, room 1502. I'll be waiting. I think I'm falling for you. The date stretched back for weeks before the gala, a digital blueprint of an affair Tiffany couldn't remember because it never happened. She hadn't sent a single one. Number. The papers rattled in Tiffany's violently shaking hands. No, this isn't real. I never sent these, Lucas. I swear I didn't. I don't even recognize this number. It's Rocco's, Lucas stated, his voice devoid of all emotion. I had it traced. I don't give a damn whose it is. I never texted him. I had never even met the man before that night. Tiffany trailed off her thoughts, racing, colliding. Someone had been using her phone to send those messages. Someone fabricated an entire affair that never took place. This was a setup, all of it. And only one person had that kind of access to her phone. Only one person other than Rocco was by her side the entire night. Chantel, Tiffany breathed out. Oh, don't. Lucas's voice sliced through the air. Don't you dare try to pin this on her. Not again. Chantel has been my rock through this whole nightmare. She's not your rock. She's been setting me up. Tiffany shot out of her chair. Lucas, just think, she was the one who introduced me to Rocco. She kept pushing champagne on me all night. She's the only one who could have gotten to my phone. And she's the one who called you, wasn't she? She's the one who was trying to warn me about you. Lucas rose to his feet as well, his voice finally breaking its monotonous calm, rising for the first time in months. For weeks leading up to the gala, all she did was tell me how worried she was about you, that you seemed distant, that you were acting strange. And I didn't listen to her because I trusted you. She was poisoning you against me, laying the groundwork. Tiffany snatched the folder, thrusting it at him. These texts, I never sent them. Check my phone, you'll see. I did. They were already gone. Chantel told me you must have deleted them to cover your tracks. Of course she said that, because she's the one who wrote them and then wiped them. Tiffany's voice broke into a sob. Tears of pure frustration streamed down her face. Lucas, please just be logical for 1 second. Why would I ever cheat on you? I love you. I have always loved only you. I don't know why. Lucas's composure finally shattered. He slammed his fist on the desk, the impact making everything jump. I don't know why you did it. For 6 months, I have torn myself apart asking that one question, and I still have no answer. Was I not enough? Was our money not enough, the penthouse? The life I was building for us, I never wanted the money. Tiffany screamed back. I never gave a damn about the penthouse or this lifestyle or any of it. All I ever wanted was you. I wanted my husband back. I wanted the man who used to paint my toenails, who quoted poetry to me. The man who looked at me like I was the only thing in his world. And I was working to give you that world. Lucas's voice finally cracked. I was killing myself building an empire so massive we could retire at 35 and just live together. Every single missed dinner, every forgotten anniversary, every goddamn night I was stuck in Tokyo away from you, I told myself it was for our future. Tiffany's voice shattered. A sacrifice I never asked you to make. I didn't need a future built on your absence. I needed you here with me, to actually look at me and see that I was fading away. God, Lucas, I was so alone. So completely and utterly alone. And maybe that left me exposed. Lucas's tone hardened instantly. Exposed to what, Tiffany? His voice fell to a venomous whisper. To him, is that what this is about? Are you trying to tell me that because I wasn't here, you just fell into Rocco's bed? No, maybe. I don't know. She buried her face in her hands, her thoughts a chaotic storm of tears and shame. That night wasn't right. Something was off from the start. I think someone put something in my drink. It sounds insane, I know, but I've never lost control like that. I remember. I kissed him. That part is clear. But after that, it's a blank. I swear nothing else happened. It feels like a setup, like I was framed. Oh, you think? A harsh, bitter laugh escaped him. You think you were framed. You think it stopped at a kiss. But the truth is you have no idea what happened, do you? Because your memory just conveniently vanished. He stalked towards her, his shadow falling over her, his eyes blazing with a raw, agonizing pain. Have you even for a second stopped to consider what the last 6 months have been for me? Every single night I lie there staring at the ceiling, wondering if he's on your mind. I look at you, and all I can picture are his hands on your skin. The thought of him touching you, kissing you, his voice fractured raw with emotion. It makes me want to put my fist through a wall. It makes me want to kill someone, Tiffany. I need to break something. And the worst part is the images. They won't stop playing in my head. I close my eyes and I see those goddamn photos. I can't escape the words in those texts. And my mind just keeps spinning, wondering what else happened that night. Wondering what other nights you have conveniently forgotten. Her hand shot out a desperate, trembling attempt to bridge the chasm between them to make him see the truth. Lucas, don't. But he recoiled as if her touch would burn him. I loved you. He whispered the words, sounding like a eulogy. More than anything in this entire world, I would have handed you the stars on a platter. That's what Tokyo was about. I was building that world for you. But I never asked for the world. Tiffany's voice was a fragile whisper. I only ever wanted you. Then why wasn't I enough for you? The question hung between them, heavy and poisonous. She had no answer. He would accept no memory to offer, as proof, nothing to fight his accusations with except her own voice. And he didn't believe her. If there's no trust left, she began, the words tasting like ash. If you can't even entertain the idea that I didn't send those texts, then I don't see how this marriage can survive. Each word was a tiny death, a piece of her hope flaking away. He flinched, his whole body recoiling as if she'd struck him. Maybe you're right, he echoed, his voice utterly devoid of life. Maybe I was just an idiot to think a woman like you would ever be satisfied with a guy like me. Her head snapped up. A woman like me. A guy like you. A hot flash of anger burned through her grief. What the hell is that supposed to mean? It means I've always known you were out of my league, he finally roared. From the second I laid eyes on you, I knew I was punching way above my weight. You had it all. The looks, the talent, that light that just drew people in. And what was I? Just some nobody from the wrong side of the tracks, too blinded by love to see I was being used. I never used you. I loved you, Lucas. I still do. Then prove it. He seized her by the shoulders, his fingers digging in. Prove to me those texts are fake. Prove to me you didn't sleep with him. Give me one goddamn thing to believe in. Anything at all, because I'm going under Tiff. This doubt is pulling me down and I need you to throw me a line. How can I prove a negative? She cried, tearing herself from his grasp. All I have is my word. All I can do is look you in the eye and swear it's the truth. But that's not enough for you, is it? You already put me on trial and found me guilty. Your mind was made up the second you heard Chantel's voice on the phone. She took a step back, then another, creating a space he couldn't cross. Tears streamed down her face. I can't live under this suspicion. I won't spend forever trying to earn back trust I never should have lost. If you can't even allow for the possibility that I'm innocent, then this is already over. There's nothing left for us. I'll pack a bag. I'll be gone by morning. Her hand closed around the doorknob, the cool metal a stark contrast to her burning skin. My lawyer will be in touch about the divorce. Take the apartment, the accounts. Take all of it. The only thing I want is to be free of this. Tiffany, wait. But the door slammed shut, the sound echoing through the vast, empty apartment like a gunshot. But she didn't head for their bedroom. Her path was straight, her purpose clear. She stormed towards the guest room, and there she was, Chantel lounging on the bed as if she owned the place, casually flicking through something on her phone. She looked completely at home. Her head lifted as Tiffany threw the door open. Tiff, oh my God, what happened? The shouting! That was you! Tiffany's voice was eerily quiet, a low hum of pure fury that was far more frightening than any scream. This was you, all of it. You framed me. Chantel's features immediately shifted into a mask of wide-eyed, innocent confusion. What on earth are you talking about? The texts, the photos, the anonymous call to my husband. It all came from you. Tiffany advanced onto her hands, trembling with a rage so profound it was almost silent. You drugged me that night, and you pushed me at Rocco. You set this whole thing up. Those pictures, you sent them to my husband, didn't you? Tiffany, you're spiraling. Am I? In a flash, Tiffany snatched the phone from Chantel's grasp. Then you shouldn't have a problem with me taking a look, should you? Just a quick peek through your messages, see what I find. Maybe a few incriminating texts to Rocco. Or, before she could finish, Chantel wrenched the phone back, her carefully crafted facade cracking for a split second. Give it back. You can't just. What, Chantel, what can I do? Tiffany's voice was a raw scream, the anguish of the last 6 months finally erupting. Can't expose you for the liar you are. Can't prove you orchestrated this whole nightmare. You blew up my marriage. You ruined my entire life and why for Lucas. You honestly believe he'll come running to you when he finds out what you've done? Chantel's expression turned to stone. The veil of innocence vanished completely. He always would have wanted me, Chantel hissed, her voice dripping with venom. If you hadn't come along and stolen him from me, I didn't steal anyone. He chose me. He chose you because you got to him first. You waltzed in with that perfect smile, those perfect curls, and that sickeningly sweet laugh of yours. The second he laid eyes on you, it was like the sun had just walked into the room. Chantel shot to her feet, confronting Tiffany with a fury that had been simmering for years. He should have been mine. I was the one who saw him first. I was the one who spoke to him first, and you just swept in and took him just like you take everything else you want. I had no idea you were interested in him. That's your problem. You never know. You never see anything beyond your own perfect world. You just drift through life, everything falling into your lap while I'm left fighting for the leftovers. An ugly sneer contorted Chantel's face. Well, that ends now. Lucas is about to see the real you. And when he's done with you, I'll be right there to comfort him. Tiffany looked at the woman who was supposed to be her family, her sister, and saw nothing but a monster. You're sick, she breathed, the words barely a whisper. You are genuinely unhinged. Not sick smart, Chantel corrected, a triumphant gleam in her eye. I've been planning this for months, every single detail, every piece of manufactured proof. And the most beautiful part of it all, you can't prove a single thing. It's your story against my carefully constructed one. And Lucas, he already chose his side. Her lips curled into a smile, and it sent a chill down Tiffany's spine. It was a look of pure glacial cruelty. A primal urge surged through Tiffany to lunge to tangle her fingers in that perfect hair and smash Chantel's face into the wall. She wanted to inflict the same jagged pain that was tearing her apart. But instead, she took a deliberate step back. You will regret this, Tiffany said, her voice dangerously low. It might not be today, and it might not be tomorrow, but the truth always finds a way out. And when it does, I pray it ruins you. With that, she turned her back on Chantel, leaving her to savor her hollow victory. By sunrise the next day, Tiffany was gone. She threw only the bare necessities into a single bag, pointedly leaving behind anything Lucas had ever given her. The jewelry, the expensive clothes, every ghost of the life being ripped away from her, stayed behind. Then she sat down to write him one last letter. Lucas, I can no longer live inside this cage you've built for me. I can't keep atoning for a sin I never committed or begging you to forgive a betrayal that only exists in your mind. You've already passed a judgment. Nothing I could ever say would change the verdict you've reached. So this is me setting you free. More importantly, it's me setting myself free. The signed divorce papers are on your desk. Just ask yourself one thing, Lucas. Who gains the most from watching us burn? Who has been poisoning your thoughts against me all this time? Who has made herself at home here, settling in as our marriage disintegrated around us? I can only hope that one day you'll finally see the truth. And when that day comes, I pray it doesn't shatter you. I loved you. I still love you, and a part of me always will. But I can't stay and let your hatred for me poison what's left. Goodbye, Lucas. Tiffany. She placed the letter on his pillow, laid her keys on the kitchen counter, and with nothing more than a small bag and a broken heart, she walked away from the Blackwater penthouse and the life she once knew. 3 hours later, Lucas discovered the letter. His hands shook as he read it, then read it again and a third time as if the words might change. Her words echoed in his mind. Who gains the most from watching us burn? Who has made herself at home here? For one agonizing suspended second, a sliver of doubt pierced through his anger. And then, as if on cue, Chantel materialized in the bedroom doorway, her features a perfect mask of concern. I heard the front door. Tiffany's gone, isn't she? Oh, Lucas, I am so sorry. I can't imagine how much this hurts. She glided to his side, settling on the edge of the bed and placing a comforting hand on his arm. You know, she began with a hollow laugh, she actually tried to blame me for all of this last night. She said that I was the one who set her up. Can you even believe the nerve after everything I did to try and help her save this marriage? Lucas's gaze dropped from Chantel's face to the letter in his trembling hand. Tiffany's question hammered in his skull. Who gains the most? She's just lashing out, Chantel continued, her voice a soothing balm. She can't accept what she's done. It's a classic defense mechanism when someone's been caught red-handed. She gave his arm a gentle squeeze, her dark eyes radiating pure empathy. But you don't have to go through this alone. I'm here for you. Anything you need, anytime. Lucas stared down at the crumpled letter, a war raging within him. Then with a slow final gesture, he let the paper slip from his fingers and drift to the floor. You're right, he said, his voice hollow. She made her decision. A flicker of a smile touched Chantel's lips. Had Lucas been paying attention? Truly paying attention, he might have caught the predatory glint of triumph in her eyes before she expertly veiled it. I am so deeply sorry you have to endure this, she murmured, draping an arm over his shoulders. But I need you to know, I would never ever leave you the way she did. He never felt the proprietary way Chantel's hand rested on the small of his back, a silent claim he was completely oblivious to. He was blind to the avarice in her eyes as she scanned the master bedroom blind, to the predator coiled just beneath the surface of his supportive friend. He only perceived a beacon of honesty in the fog of his pain. She was the one who had tried to sound the alarm, the one who remained when his wife had shattered his world and walked away. And lost in the wreckage of his heart, desperate for any port in the storm, he had opened the door and let Chantel walk right in. From there, Chantel began her campaign, whispering the venomous story of Tiffany's betrayal. She recounted the tale to anyone who would lend an ear, meticulously poisoning every well and burning every bridge until Tiffany's name was mud. In a city where everyone's life was public domain, the betrayal felt personal to many. The gallery that showcased her paintings suddenly refused her work, and the school where she taught showed her the door. She was left with absolutely nothing. But secrets have a way of clawing their way into the light, and the fallout from Chantel's scheme was about to become legendary. Back in the present, Lucas was isolated in his study, the immense silence of the penthouse broken only by the low hum of his laptop. The clock had crept past midnight, but sleep was a luxury he hadn't known for 3 days, not since seeing Tiffany in that diner, not since her accusation of being spectacularly stupid had branded itself onto his soul. It had been 3 days since the fury in her eyes burned brighter than any flame as she stuffed his cash back into his coat. 3 days that a corrosive doubt had been methodically dissolving the foundations of his reality. His laptop screen cast a ghostly glow in the dark, illuminating a folder he hadn't dared to touch in 3 long years. It was the evidence file, the raw photos and screenshots, not the neatly packaged investigator's report. Lucas had forged a $6 billion empire by analyzing data, by spotting the patterns and anomalies everyone else overlooked. Yet for the first time since that catastrophic night, he wasn't looking at the file as a betrayed husband. He was dissecting it as a cold, impartial analyst hunting for the unvarnished truth. He opened the first image. It was Tiffany in their bed, her eyes shut, her face unnaturally still. Rocco was next to her, arranged in a compromising position. But now, with the blinders of rage finally off, a glaring detail screamed at him. Tiffany's expression wasn't one of serene sleep. It was the slack-jawed vacancy of someone who was completely unconscious. Her makeup was smudged, true, but not from a night of passion. It looked more like the streaks left by tears, or something far worse. And her hand, the one that was supposed to be resting on Rocco's shoulder, wasn't even making contact. It was just lying there, lifeless, like a prop, carefully placed in a scene. Lucas felt his pulse hammer as he magnified the image, his eyes darting to the timestamp. Every single photograph had been captured inside a 5-minute window. This wasn't the chronicle of a torrid affair. 5 minutes. It was just enough time for someone to stage the scene, snap a few shots from different angles, and disappear. His hands began to tremble as he clicked open the screenshots of the supposed text messages, forcing himself to read them with a fresh perspective. I can't get you out of my head. Last night was incredible. The words felt alien. This wasn't how Tiffany communicated. Her texts were a whirlwind of emojis and exclamation marks, peppered with silly typos that she found hilarious. These messages were sterile, generic. They were clinical. It was as if they'd been composed by someone trying to imitate her, but who had no idea of her spirit. Lucas navigated to the message metadata. Every one of them was sent at times Tiffany was known to be in her art class or volunteering at the community center. Times her phone would have been tossed in her bag, completely ignored. Times that it would have been tragically easy for someone she trusted to gain access. Someone exactly like Chantel. Ask yourself, she had written, who stands to gain the most from our ruin? The words from Tiffany's final letter, a letter he'd arrogantly dismissed as a liar's deflection, crashed back into his mind with the force of a tidal wave. He shot up from his chair and strode to the massive window, staring out at the glittering expanse of the Detroit skyline. Right now, somewhere in that sprawling city, Tiffany was likely pulling a double shift, exhausted, fighting to survive, and working herself into the ground, all while Chantel was here in his life and his home. Entrenching herself, making herself vital to his existence, as if this had been her master plan from the very beginning. Lucas spun around, seeing his own penthouse as if for the first time. Chantel's cardigan was draped over a chair. Her designer shoes were neatly placed by the entrance, and the faint scent of her perfume hung in the air, a ghost that had claimed every room. When did all this happen? When had she transitioned from a friend who visited to a permanent part of the landscape? He snatched his phone, his thumb flying to the calendar app, scrolling back 3 years. He tracked her visits. The frequency had started to escalate about 2 months before the night of the gala. Just keeping Tiffany company, she'd claimed with a smile. Making sure she doesn't get too lonely while you're working. How utterly convenient. Lucas collapsed back into his chair and did the one thing he should have done 3 years prior. He began to dig. A real investigation. He pulled up the official report from the private investigator, the one who had delivered the folder that had detonated his marriage. The agent's name was Donald Hudson. Lucas typed the name into a secure search engine. The record showed that Donald Hudson Private Investigations had ceased operations 6 months after closing Lucas's case. There was no new address, no contact info, nothing. The entire business had simply vanished into thin air. Lucas leaned closer to the screen and started to dig for Hudson's personal details. The moment his business was shuttered, the man relocated to Florida and bought himself a house. He paid in cash for a property that was leagues beyond what a private investigator's salary could ever justify. It reeked of a massive payout for one very particular assignment. A wave of nausea hit Lucas as he moved on, searching for the building's security guard next. He found him, Thomas Morrison, the guard who had meticulously logged Rocco's fabricated visits to the penthouse. And just like the PI, Thomas Morrison had also moved away right after the divorce, settling in Arizona. The picture was starting to become terrifyingly clear. Every single person who testified had either vanished without a trace or suddenly come into a fortune immediately after their statements. Lucas snatched his phone, his fingers flying, to call his head of security, a man whose loyalty was absolute. "Mr. Blackwater," James's voice came through on the second ring, sharp and awake despite the hour. "Sir, is there a problem? I need security footage pulled from the archives from 3 years ago." Lucas said, his voice hard, skipping any pleasantries. "Focus on the service elevator and the parking garage, everything from October through December." "That's a massive amount of data, sir. What exactly should I be looking for?" "Any activity involving a man named Rocco Bellini and—" Lucas's throat tightened. Anything at all with Chantel Duca. A beat of silence hung on the line before James spoke again. "Ms. Duca, sir. She's—" "I'm well aware of who she is," Lucas cut him off. "Just find the footage. Every last frame. I want it on my desk by sunrise." "Consider it done, sir." Lucas ended the call and just stared at the damning images on his laptop. The photos, the text messages. 3 years of manufactured proof he had blindly accepted because the pain and his own deep-seated insecurities wouldn't let him see anything else. He could almost hear Tiffany's voice. "You were so ready to believe the worst of me." And she was right. He had been. Because a part of him had always been waiting for the other shoe to drop, convinced she would eventually leave him. He couldn't shake the feeling that a woman like her, stunning, brilliant, and kind, would eventually wise up and realize she was out of his league, that he was just some kid from the wrong side of the tracks who got lucky with a tech startup. So when the evidence was laid at his feet, he clung to it. It was the confirmation he'd always dreaded. It was validation for all his pathetic insecurities. But what if it wasn't validation at all? What if it was all an elaborate trap, a masterpiece of deceit engineered specifically to prey on his deepest fears? Lucas's thumb scrolled through his contacts, landing on a name he hadn't dialed in an eternity. Ned Goodman, an old college buddy who was now a leading forensic digital analyst. "Lucas Blackwater," Ned answered, the surprise unmistakable in his tone. "Man, it's been ages. What's going on?" "I'm calling in a favor, Ned," Lucas said directly. "I have some photos and text message screenshots I need you to examine. I need to know if they've been doctored in any way." "No problem, I can handle that." What kind of mess are you in? Lucas paused, the weight of his next words crushing him. I think I've made a terrible mistake, Ned. A catastrophic one. And I have to know the truth. If you're rooting for Lucas to finally uncover the conspiracy, smash that comment button and type "Find the Truth, Lucas." And make sure you subscribe, because the discovery he's on the verge of making will shatter everything you think you know. By 6 a.m., sleep was a distant memory. Lucas was hollowed out. He had torn through a mountain of records all night, chasing payments, untangling digital webs, and every single thread led back to one horrifying reality. He'd been manipulated. It was a systematic, methodical, and flawlessly executed takedown. His phone vibrated, a message from James. Got it. Sir, you need to see this immediately. Sending the files to your secure server right now. Lucas's hands shook as he opened his email and initiated the download. The first clip was from the service elevator, time-stamped on the night of the company gala. The doors slid open to reveal Chantel propping up a barely conscious Tiffany. And right there with them, helping drag Tiffany's limp form, was Rocco. Ice flooded Lucas's veins as he watched them haul his wife toward the penthouse. He saw Chantel swipe a keycard, Tiffany's keycard, which she must have lifted from her purse. He watched them vanish into the elevator, his wife completely incapacitated between them. The next file was from the parking garage, dated 2 weeks prior to the gala. It showed Chantel in a shadowy corner, meeting with a man who handed her a small package. Lucas couldn't make out what it was. An envelope of cash was exchanged. The man's face was cloaked in darkness, but for a split second, Lucas saw his profile. It was Thomas Morrison, the guard who had vouched for Rocco's bogus visits. Another video clip. This time, Chantel was with Donald, the private investigator. Another transfer of money. Lucas slumped back in his chair, a profound sickness rising in his gut. She had orchestrated the entire thing. Every single detail, every shred of evidence. She had bought off witnesses, faked photographs, cloned Tiffany's phone to send those vile texts. She had constructed a conspiracy from the ground up to annihilate his marriage. And he had fallen for every single lie. His phone buzzed again. It was an email from Ned. Lucas, I'm done with the analysis on those files. I have no idea what you're mixed up in, but whoever did this is a pro. The photos have definitely been digitally altered. It's not a clumsy Photoshop job. It's subtle. Minor adjustments to lighting and object placement, all designed to suggest a scene was staged. The timeline's been doctored to cover any gaps, and the metadata confirms it. The texts are from screenshots, yes, but there's no way to prove they originated from the phone number in question. It would be simple enough for someone with the phone to text themselves, take a picture of the screen, and then just wipe the conversation clean. We see this kind of thing all the time in fraud cases. The long and short of it is this: as proof of an affair, none of this would survive 5 minutes in a courtroom. It's riddled with holes. Give me a call if you need anything else. Ned Lucas read the email again, a crushing weight settling in his chest. A fabrication. All of it. The cheating, the lies, the mountain of evidence that had torn his marriage to shreds. It was all a complete fabrication. Tiffany had been telling him the truth the entire time, and he, like a fool, had cast her aside without a second thought. His legs trembling, Lucas forced himself to stand and walk toward the master bedroom. He stopped at the threshold, his eyes fixed on the bed where the photos were supposedly taken. The bed where he had envisioned Tiffany with someone else. The bed that had been the star of his nightmares for 3 long years. It was all built on a lie. A vicious, meticulously crafted, soul-crushing lie. And he'd swallowed it whole, too insecure, too terrified, too certain he wasn't worthy of the one woman who had truly loved him. You're awake early. Lucas whipped around to see Chantel in the hallway, clad in one of his old t-shirts and a pair of sleep shorts, her hair flawlessly coiffed even at this hour. A warm smile spread across her face. I was just about to start on some breakfast, she offered. I figured you'd need to eat before your 8 a.m. meeting. Get out. Chantel's smile vanished. I'm sorry, I said, get out of my house. Lucas's voice was a low, chilling whisper. Ned, what on earth are you talking about? What's happened? What's happened? A harsh, ugly laugh escaped Lucas's lips. I'll tell you what's happened. I spent my entire night glued to security tapes watching you. Watching you manipulate my wife, orchestrate those staged photographs, and pay off every last witness. The color drained from Chantel's face. I have no idea what you're imagining you saw. I saw it all. Lucas raised his phone, displaying the footage for her. Here you are with Rocco carrying an unconscious Tiffany into this very penthouse. And here you are handing a fat envelope of cash to Thomas Morrison. And this is you on the phone coordinating everything with Donald. He advanced on her, and for the first time, Chantel recoiled. I had everything analyzed. Lucas seethed, his entire body shaking with fury. The photos, the text messages, every minute of the timeline. And guess what? It all points to fraud. Manipulation. The goddamn conspiracy. Lucas, you absolute monster. You destroyed my marriage. His voice erupted into a full-blown roar. You drugged my wife. You faked those pictures. You faked the texts. You paid people to ruin her. And I fell for it. I threw away the woman I loved because I was stupid enough to believe you. And just like that, Chantel's carefully constructed facade shattered. The caring, devoted friend dissolved, revealing a cold, desperate creature underneath. She was never good enough for you, Chantel shrieked. She never saw you for who you are. All she ever did was complain about how lonely and pathetic she was. She was loyal, and she was faithful, and she loved me. I love you. Chantel seized his arms, her perfectly polished nails digging into his flesh like talons. I have loved you from the moment I laid eyes on you. I was the one who introduced you to Tiffany. You were meant for me, but the second you saw her, it was like I ceased to exist. The tears were coming now, hot and ugly, carving streaks through her makeup. All my life, I've had to watch her get everything that should have been mine. Every award, every promotion, every single person that ever mattered. I was finished. I was done being in her shadow. I was done being second best. Lucas tore his arms from her grasp, staring at her as if she were poison. So you ruined an innocent woman's life. Out of jealousy. I gave you 3 years to finally see me. Chantel's voice was a raw, desperate scream. 3 years, I was the one here for you. I was the one who picked up the pieces. I was the one who took care of you, not her me. You're sick, Lucas whispered, his voice laced with horror. You are genuinely sick in the head. I'm in love. She reached for him again, but he flinched away. Ned, please, we can get past this. We can... There is no we. Lucas was already holding his phone. I'm calling the police. You're going to jail for fraud, for conspiracy, and for anything else my lawyers can dream up. And after that, I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure the entire world knows exactly what you are. The fight went out of her and her face crumpled. No, Lucas, please. You can't. Just watch me. He dialed the number, his eyes locked on her face as he calmly detailed her crimes to the dispatcher on the other end. Chantel collapsed onto the floor in a heap, her sobs echoing in the room as her meticulously planned world turned to ash around her. She'll never take you back. You know, she choked out between sobs. Even when she knows the truth, even if you beg, Tiffany will never forgive you for not believing in her. The words hit Lucas like a dagger to the heart, because he knew with sickening certainty that she was probably right. But he was damn well going to try. 2 hours later, long after the police had led a handcuffed Chantel away, Lucas was left standing alone in the ruins of the life he had built. The opulent furniture, the one-of-a-kind artwork, the windows that stretched from floor to ceiling, framing a view worth millions. But it was all just a hollow shell, a meaningless void, because the one thing that ever gave it life was gone. And it was all his fault. Snatching his keys, Lucas bolted for the door, a single thought consuming him. He had to get to Tiffany. He had to make her see the truth. He had to plead for a forgiveness he knew deep down he would never deserve. His first stop was Rosie's Diner, but the hostess informed him Tiffany wasn't scheduled to come in until the evening shift. She's probably at her other job, the woman offered with a look of pity. That cleaning service. Elite Services, I think that's the name. They handle the office towers downtown. Something shattered inside of Lucas. Tiffany. His Tiffany, an artist whose work once hung in galleries, was now scrubbing floors in office buildings. All because of him. Because his pride was too fragile, his insecurity too loud, and his faith in her tragically absent. He raced to the Elite Services office, explaining with a desperate urgency that he had to find Tiffany Campbell. She's out on a job, the manager replied. The Riverside building over on Jefferson. She should be wrapping up soon if you'd like to wait here. But Lucas was already gone. The Riverside building. The very same building Chantel had sworn was the site of Tiffany and Rocco's first tryst. The brutal irony of it all settled on him like a shroud as he rode the elevator to the 15th floor. The one floor Tiffany was supposedly terrified of, given her crippling fear of heights. He found her there alone in a vacant office, pushing a vacuum cleaner, lost in the sound from her earbuds. For a long moment, Lucas just watched her, his heart aching. Her beautiful golden twists were tied back in a simple, practical bun. Her face was bare, stripped of any makeup, And her hands, the same hands that had once painted masterpieces, were now raw and red from harsh cleaning chemicals. She looked bone-tired, worn to the very edge, but she was still achingly beautiful. She was still his Tiffany. He must have made a noise because her head snapped up, she saw him, and she went completely still. The world seemed to stop for a heartbeat. Then Tiffany tore the earbuds from her ears, her expression hardening into a cold, impenetrable mask. "What are you doing here?" Her voice was ice. "Have you resorted to stalking me now?" "Tiffany, Lucas's voice broke. I just need to talk to you, please." "No," she turned her back on him, gripping the vacuum. "I have nothing left to say to you. I'm on the clock, so unless your goal is to get me fired, I suggest you leave." "You were right," Lucas choked out the words, halting her in her tracks. "You were right about everything." Tiffany turned back around, her eyes narrowed with a deep, weary suspicion. "Right about what, Chantel?" Lucas had to force the name past the lump in his throat. "She framed you, every last bit of it. The pictures, the text messages, the so-called witnesses. She engineered the entire thing just to tear us apart." Tiffany just stared, her face a blank canvas. "And you've come to this conclusion." "How?" she asked, her tone dangerously even. "After 3 years, did you finally get around to doing some actual investigating?" "I found the security footage," Lucas rushed to say, "from the night of the gala. It shows Chantel and Rocco carrying you to the pen. So you were completely unconscious. Then I found the witnesses. Every one of them was paid to lie. I had the photos and texts authenticated. They were fakes digitally altered." He took a hesitant step towards her, his hands trembling. "Tiffany, I am so sorry. God, I am so, so sorry. You were innocent the whole time. You were screaming the truth and I refused to listen. I refused to trust you. I threw away everything that ever mattered to me because I was too weak and too foolish to see." "Stop," Tiffany commanded, holding up a hand. "Just stop." Lucas went silent. The look she was giving him wasn't anger. It wasn't sadness. It was something far colder, something absolute. "So you finally put it all together," she said, her voice barely a whisper. 3 years later, you've cracked the case that I was trying to solve for you from day one. Congratulations, Lucas. You're a real genius. Do you have any concept of what these last 3 years have been like for me?" Her voice started to tremble with a rage she could no longer contain. "I lost it all. My home, my career, my name, my husband. I've been working 2 jobs around the clock just to afford a tiny apartment, crawling with roaches. Some days I've been so exhausted I could barely even stand up straight. And through all of it, I knew I was innocent. But no one would believe me." Hot tears finally began to streak down her face. "Not my friends, not the lawyers, and not you. Especially not you. The one man who promised to love me, for better or for worse. The man who swore he would always have my back. You glanced at a few fake pictures and text messages and convicted me on the spot without a single question." "I know," Lucas whispered, his own voice thick with shame. "I know, and I'll hate myself forever for it. Tiffany, please." "Please what?" Her laugh was a sharp, bitter sound. "Please forgive you. Please take you back. Please just erase the last 3 years of hell, as if they never happened." She stepped right up to him, her dark eyes, Ibam burning with righteous fire. "You want to know the most twisted part of all this, oh Lucas? The absolute worst part. I spent 6 months of my life begging you, pleading with you to just believe me. 6 months trying to prove my innocence when it should never have been in doubt. And you just looked right through me, like I was a complete stranger, like 7 years of our lives together meant absolutely nothing." "It meant everything." Lucas sobbed, the tears now flowing freely down his own cheeks, a pathetic, useless torrent. "For me, Tiffany, it was everything. I was terrified, insecure. I was convinced you believed I wasn't strong enough to remain loyal to you." Tiffany shot back. "You were so certain I was going to walk out on you that you decided to destroy everything first. You were so consumed with finding a traitor that you were blind to the loyalty standing right before your eyes." The truth in her words silenced him completely. "I loved you." Tiffany's voice was barely a whisper. "Loving you was a physical ache. I loved you when you didn't have a dime to your name. I loved you when you became a titan of industry. I loved you when you were never there, when a phone call was too much to ask, and when I was nothing more than an item on your to-do list. I loved you through all of it." Her voice cracked with pain. "But your love for me wasn't enough to trust me. I do love you, Lucas pleaded, his voice thick with desperation. There was never a moment I stopped loving you, Tiffany. I'm begging you. I know I don't have any right to ask for your forgiveness. I realize I'm the one who burned us to the ground, but please just give me one chance to make this right. For a long moment, Tiffany stood silent, tears carving paths down her cheeks. Finally, she shook her head. I can't, she breathed. I can't survive this a second time. Lucas, I can't live the rest of my days questioning if your trust is real or if you're just hunting for the next clue to prove I've betrayed you. I will never question you again, Lucas vowed. I give you my word, You already said that. Tiffany's voice was empty. On the day we married, you made a vow to trust me, to have faith in me through good times and bad. And at the very first sign of bad times, you shattered that vow. She took a step away from him, the distance between them feeling like a canyon. I'm glad you finally see the truth, but it doesn't change what you did. It doesn't wipe away 3 years of misery. And it doesn't change the fact that in my darkest hour, you left me to face it all alone. Tiffany, I'm begging you. I need you to go, Tiffany said, her tone firm and final. I have to finish this shift, and then I have to get to my other job because this is my reality now. And you need to return to your ivory tower and your corporate kingdom and the life you chose without me. A life without you is no life at all, Lucas said, his voice breaking. You should have considered that 3 years ago. Tiffany turned her back, the roar of the vacuum cleaner sealing their conversation. He was dismissed. He lingered for another second, trying to burn this image of her into his memory. The way the overhead lights danced in her golden twists, the defiant set of her shoulders, the perfect line of her profile. Then he forced himself to turn and leave his heart breaking into smaller pieces with each step. Lucas couldn't bring himself to go back to his penthouse. The entire place felt poisoned now, corrupted by Chantel's deceit, by his own unforgivable foolishness, by the ghost of everything he had lost. He drove to his office instead and immediately called his attorney. I need 3 things handled immediately, Lucas commanded. Number 1, I want Chantel prosecuted with every tool at our disposal. Fraud, conspiracy, anything that will stick. I want her to see the inside of a prison cell. His lawyer didn't hesitate. Consider it handled. What's next? Number 2, I want a public retraction issued that completely exonerates Tiffany, detailing the entire scheme and making it crystal clear that she was innocent and I was a fool. That is going to cause a public relations nightmare for you, Lucas. Excellent. I've earned far worse. What's the third thing? Third, I want you to calculate every single dollar Tiffany was legally owed from our divorce. She took absolutely nothing. She just left. I want to make her whole. The penthouse is hers if she'll have it. Half of my net worth. No more than half. Give her all of it if that's what she'll take. His lawyer was stunned into silence for a moment. Lucas, if you give her everything you'll be left with. I don't care. Lucas cut him off. I convinced myself I built that whole empire for us, for our life together. Well, she deserves her part of it. She deserves to get back everything she lost because of my actions. All right, I will get the documents drafted. Lucas ended the call and stared out over the Detroit skyline from his office window. He had dedicated 3 years to constructing an even greater empire. More wealth, more accolades, more of everything. And it had all been utterly hollow without her. His phone vibrated on the desk. It was a text from his chief of security. James Chantel is in custody. Charges include fraud, conspiracy, illegal administration of a controlled substance, and perjury. The district attorney is confident, given the mountain of evidence we supplied. She is facing substantial prison time. Lucas thought he would feel a surge of triumph, of justice, of vindication. But all he felt was a profound emptiness, because Chantel's imprisonment couldn't repair what he had shattered. It couldn't bring Tiffany back. It couldn't erase 3 years of agony. The villain is finally getting her comeuppance. If you're here for that moment of justice, drop a comment saying karma came for Chantel. But the vital question remains, can Lucas ever win back the woman he destroyed? Or is the damage irreversible? Don't go anywhere, because this story is far from finished. The next morning, Lucas's public apology was the lead story on every major news platform. A statement from Lucas Blackwater, Chief Executive Officer of Blackwater Technologies. 3 years ago, I made the most catastrophic mistake of my life. I permitted myself to be manipulated by a malicious lie fueled by my own deep-seated insecurities, which resulted in the utter ruin of my marriage to Tiffany Campbell. I now state with absolute and irrefutable certainty that my ex-wife was completely innocent of the betrayal I accused her of. Our marriage was destroyed by a calculated, vicious plot, and she was its intended victim. The architect of this scheme is in custody awaiting trial. But that doesn't change the truth about Tiffany Campbell. She is the most fiercely loyal, honest, and profoundly loving soul I have ever encountered. Her devotion to me, to us, never wavered for a single moment. And how did I honor that? With gutless suspicion and by walking away. She was worthy of so much more than the man I was to her. This is my public confession, my attempt to restore the good name I helped tarnish, and to admit my own profound failure. A failure of catastrophic, soul-crushing proportions. My own pride, my pathetic insecurities became a veil over my eyes, blinding me to what was right in front of me. An innocent woman paid the price for my weakness. And to Tiffany, I know these words can't erase the agony I put you through. They can't reclaim the 3 years stolen from your life. But my hope, my only prayer, is that they can begin to rebuild the impeccable reputation that should never have been questioned. For all of it, I am so deeply sorry. Signed, Lucas Blackwater. In a matter of hours, the confession had ignited the internet. His phone became a screaming siren of incoming calls, media vultures, business partners, ghosts from his past, all demanding the salacious details. He answered none of them. Only one person's response mattered, but his phone remained silent. 2 weeks crawled by. From the shadows, Lucas observed the first tremors of change in Tiffany's world. His public declaration was having its intended effect. The very people who had cast her out were now extending tentative olive branches. The gallery that had unceremoniously dismissed her came crawling back, apologizing, offering her a solo exhibition. An invitation arrived from the community center where she once taught art to children. Quietly, Lucas ensured the financial restitution was delivered, every penny she was entitled to. It was half of their shared assets, with an additional sum to compensate for the 3 years of hardship she endured. His legal team reported her initial refusal. She wouldn't accept a handout. They had to press the point this wasn't charity. It was a debt legally and morally owed. Finally, she relented. For Lucas, it was a glimmer of hope that she was finally reclaiming her life piece by piece, even if he could never be a part of it again. 3 weeks after that raw, painful confrontation at the Riverside building, Lucas was buried in work late one evening when the intercom on his desk crackled to life. "Mr. Blackwater, you have a visitor." She doesn't have an appointment, but she insisted. A voice cut through the assistants, a voice he knew better than his own. "Just send her in." In that instant, Lucas's heart seized in his chest. The door swung open, and there she was, Tiffany. She was transformed from the woman he'd last seen. She was dressed elegantly, not in flashy labels, but with a quiet confidence. Her golden, kinky twists were immaculate, tumbling down her back like a waterfall. A subtle trace of eyeliner accentuated the depth of her dark eyes. She looked whole, rested, radiant. It was the look of someone putting themselves back together again. Lucas rose from his chair, his movements deliberate, terrified that any sudden motion might shatter the fragile mirage that had brought her to his door. "Tiffany." The name escaped his lips like a prayer. "Hello, Lucas." Her tone was perfectly level. Not welcoming, but devoid of the ice he'd expected. An eternity seemed to pass in the silent space between them, two worlds just staring at one another. "I saw the statement." She finally broke the silence. "And the money came through." "You were owed every cent," he said, his voice thick. "All of it, and then some." "I know." She closed the distance between them, coming to a stop just shy of his desk. "I also heard about Chantel, that she could be put away for up to 15 years. "Good day." Lucas's response was curt, sharp. "She shattered lives. She earned every second of that sentence." Tiffany gave a slow, deliberate nod. "I agree." The silence returned heavy and thick. "Why did you come here, Tiffany?" Lucas asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining. I just never imagined I'd see you again." Tiffany's gaze dropped to her own hands, then lifted to meet his once more. "These last few weeks, I've done a lot of thinking," she began, "about everything that went down, about your role in it, and about what I need now." Lucas held his breath, waiting for the verdict. "What you did," she went on, her voice steady, "was unforgivable. You refused to trust me. You had no faith in me. You allowed your own demons to burn something beautiful to the ground. For that alone, I should despise you." Lucas could only nod, a knot tightening in his throat. "But I don't," she added, her voice softening just a fraction. "I don't hate you. Believe me, I tried. God, how I wished I could just hate you. It would be so much cleaner, so much simpler to just despise you and walk away forever. She took another step, erasing more of the space between them. But the truth, the impossible truth, is that I'm still in love with you. I never stopped. And that's the entire problem. The rhythm in Lucas's chest hammered against his ribs, a frantic, desperate drumbeat. The problem, she said, tears finally welling up, threatening to spill, is that loving you has been the most painful experience of my entire life. Loving you without being loved in return, without trust, without faith, it almost broke me into a million pieces. But I did love you back. Lucas insisted, the desperation raw in his voice. I never stopped loving you, you just loved your own fear more, she finished for him, her voice cutting through his excuse. Your fear of not being worthy was more powerful than your love for me. And that Lucas is the thing I can't get past, not the mistake itself, not even Chantel's deception. It was how eager you were to believe I could betray you, as if you were just waiting for the other shoe to drop. Every instinct screamed at him to deny it, to fight back, but the words died in his throat. She was right. He confessed, his voice shattering. I was just waiting for the day you'd finally see that you could have so much better than me. So when her proof landed in my lap, it felt like a confirmation of my deepest, darkest fear. He finally moved from behind the shield of his desk, closing the last bit of distance between them. But it was all a lie. I was so wrong, model. You were flawless, devoted, true, everything I ever imagined. And I threw it all away because I was too broken to believe I deserved you. The words caught in Tiffany's throat as tears began to carve paths down her cheeks. When Chantel waved those pictures in your face, when she spun that web of deceit, I needed you to stand firm and think, no, that's not my Tiffany. That's not the woman who has built a life with me for 7 years. I needed you to give me the benefit of the doubt before you tore my world apart. Lucas's voice cracked. I know. I know that's what I should have done, he choked out, and I will carry the weight of that failure for the rest of my days. They stood, a universe of pain separating them by mere inches, both of them weeping. I don't know if that trust can ever be rebuilt, Tiffany finally whispered. How can I give my heart back to the person who shattered it so completely? I understand, Lucas said, his voice raw, and I have no right to ask you to. I had to make sure you knew that I finally see the truth, that I believe in you, and that I am so profoundly sorry. Your apology came through loud and clear, Tiffany replied. That public statement made sure of it. You managed to confess and utterly humiliate yourself for the entire world to see. In spite of the agony, a faint smile touched Lucas's lips. You saw that. Everyone saw it, Lucas. It's probably been shared 1,000,000 times by now. Tiffany swiped at her wet cheeks. The internet can't decide if you're the most courageous man on the planet or the world's biggest fool. It's entirely possible I'm both, Lucas conceded. The silence between them hung heavy for another long moment, and then Tiffany said something that stopped Lucas's heart cold. I'm nowhere near ready to forgive you, and getting back together isn't even a possibility right now. The hope in Lucas's chest collapsed, but he managed a solemn nod. I get it. But then she continued, I was thinking maybe we could start from scratch. Not as husband and wife, not even as friends, just two strangers learning who the other is all over again. A flicker of light ignited in the darkness of Lucas's heart. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe we could get coffee, Tiffany offered carefully. Maybe we could actually communicate, talk about it all, what went so wrong, the insecurities that drove you, and how we both allowed such a chasm to grow between us. She took a small step forward, her intense gaze locking onto his. It means I'm willing to entertain the idea that a person can truly change, that you could find a way to believe in me again, and maybe, just maybe, I could learn to do the same for you. But this will take time, Lucas, a very long time. I have nothing but time, Lucas said instantly, his voice thick with conviction. All the time in the world. Tiffany, I will wait forever if that's what it takes. Day by day, I will show you that I'm a different man, that my faith in you is absolute, that my trust is yours. Don't make promises you aren't prepared to keep, Tiffany warned, her voice firm. I'm not. Lucas reached out, his movements slow and deliberate, giving her every chance to retreat. He gently took her hand in his, the rough, calloused hand that told the story of 3 long years of struggle. This is a vow I intend to honor for the rest of my life, however long that may be. Tiffany's eyes dropped to their joined hands before rising to meet his again. Coffee, she stated with finality. That is the only thing I am agreeing to. Coffee and conversation. That's the deal. Coffee and conversation is a miracle, Lucas breathed, and he meant it with every fiber of his being. It was infinitely more than he deserved, more than he had dared to pray for. It was a chance, a possibility, the faintest glimmer of hope that one day he might be worthy of what he so carelessly destroyed. Saturday morning, Tiffany proposed. There's that little coffee shop in Midtown. The one where we had our first date, a lump formed in Lucas's throat. I remember it perfectly. 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock. Tiffany confirmed, giving his hand a single brief squeeze before letting go. Don't you dare be late. I won't be, Lucas vowed. He would sooner cease to exist. As Tiffany turned to go, she paused at the doorway. Lucas? Yeah. She looked over her shoulder, and for the first time in 3 years, a flicker of warmth softened her gaze. It was a look that felt almost like hope. I'm glad you finally uncovered the truth, even if it took you 3 agonizing years to find it. And then she was gone, leaving Lucas alone in his office, tears streaming down his face with a heart full of hope for the first time since the day he had burned his own world to the ground. That Saturday morning, Lucas was at the coffee shop a full 30 minutes early. He claimed the very same table where their story had begun 7 years prior. The spot where he'd been buried in code and she'd been absorbed in art portfolios, where a simple conversation had sparked and burned for hours, igniting everything that came after. Precisely at 10 o'clock in the morning, Tiffany entered. She wore a simple top and jeans, her golden kinky twists falling freely around her shoulders. Her face was bare, save for a hint of lip gloss. She was breathtakingly real, so achingly familiar to the woman he had first loved that his chest tightened with a bittersweet pain. Hey, she said, easing into the chair opposite him. Hey, Lucas managed to reply, his voice a little hoarse. They placed their orders, 2 black coffees, just like always, and for a long moment they simply sat in the quiet, studying one another. This feels strange, Tiffany admitted at last. Beyond strange, Lucas agreed. A small shared smile cracked the tension in the air. So, Tiffany began, cradling her warm mug. Walk me through the last 3 years. And so Lucas did. He spoke of the suffocating loneliness. He spoke of the crushing regret and of the endless nights he lay awake haunted by the memory of her face. He'd buried himself in work, desperate to outrun the pain. But the empire he built felt more like a tomb, a hollow victory, when the one person he wanted to share it with was gone. He laid it all bare, how Chantel had crept into the periphery of his life, a ghost he was too lost in his own sorrow to even see. How he'd been on the verge of letting her in right before the universe put Tiffany back in his path at that diner, causing his carefully constructed world to shatter. And then he confessed the deeper wounds, the insecurities he'd papered over his entire life. That constant gnawing fear of never being enough, and the bone-deep certainty that a woman like Tiffany was only ever temporary for a man like him. I came from nothing, Lucas confessed, his voice barely a whisper. Less than nothing. And even with all this, he gestured vaguely, a part of me is still that kid, the one mocked for the holes in his shoes, the one who knew he didn't belong with the pretty girls from the right side of the tracks. His eyes locked on hers, completely raw and vulnerable. You were always in a different league, Tiff. Always. I never stopped feeling it. So when Chantel presented her proof, it didn't feel like a betrayal, Tfao. It felt like an inevitability, confirming the darkest story I'd always told myself. That eventually you'd realize you could do so much better. A heavy silence hung between them for a long moment. Do you have any idea what I saw the first time we met? She finally asked. I saw a man who was breathtakingly handsome, brilliant, and filled with a passion that was as kind as it was fierce. A man who was pouring his entire soul into building something that mattered. A man whose laughter was infectious, who challenged me, and who looked at my paintings like they were sacred. She reached across the table, her fingers gently intertwining with his. I never gave a damn where you came from, Mocus. I fell in love with who you were. The tragedy is that somewhere along the line, you completely forgot that person. I know, he choked out, his grip tightening on her hand. And I'm fixing it. I'm seeing someone, a therapist, to deal with all of it, the insecurity, the fear of being left behind, all the baggage. Good, Tiffany said, her voice firm. Because if we have even a sliver of a chance of trying again, and I mean that you have to do the work, you need to understand what broken part of you was so ready to believe the absolute worst of me. I will, Lucas promised. I am. For the next 3 hours, the walls came down. They dissected their marriage moment by painful moment. They revisited where the cracks formed his suffocating absence and the crushing weight of her solitude. They pinpointed the exact moment they'd stopped speaking the same language. I should have screamed at you about how lonely I was, Tiffany admitted. Instead of just hoping you'd see me, I should have demanded your time instead of settling for the scraps you left over. And I should have been there, Lucas countered softly. Not just my body in a room, but my soul, my heart. I was so obsessed with building a kingdom I thought would make you happy. I forgot that the only thing you ever wanted was me. More coffee fueled more conversation, unlocking more truth than they'd shared in years. When the cafe finally shut its doors at 2 p.m., they drifted to a nearby park, the words still pouring out of them. As the sun began to dip below the skyline, Lucas felt a sensation he hadn't experienced in 3 years. It wasn't happiness, not yet. It was peace, the kind of quiet calm that only comes from brutal honesty, from feeling truly seen from the first fragile steps of rebuilding from the rubble. I should probably go, Tiffany said at last as the park lamps began to glow. I've got work in this morning. Can I see you again? The question tumbled out of him. Same time next week. Tiffany let the question hang in the air. Maybe. I need to think about it. She rose and Lucas mirrored her movement. For a beat, they simply stared at each other across the chasm of their history. Then Tiffany did something that made Lucas's heart hammer against his ribs. She closed the small space between them and hugged him. It wasn't the hug of a lover. It was careful, brief, but it was connection. It was the first time their bodies had met with anything but anger in 3 long years. Thank you for being so honest with me today, she whispered, and for not pressuring me. I meant it, he replied, his voice thick. I'll wait for as long as it takes. Tiffany pulled away, a real smile finally reaching her eyes. We'll see. Then she turned and walked away, and Lucas watched her silhouette until it was swallowed by the corner. He pulled out his phone, his thumb hovering over the screen before typing, "Thank you for giving me a chance, Tiff, even this small one. It means everything." A moment later, his phone buzzed in his hand. Her reply, "Don't screw it up this time." A genuine smile touched Lucas's lips. And for the first time in 3 years, he felt a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, everything would be okay. For the first time in 3 years, Lucas and Tiffany have finally had a real conversation. If you are hoping they can find their way back to one another, drop a comment saying, "Give love a second chance." And be sure to hit that subscribe button. This story is a long way from over. Keep watching. 6 months later, Lucas stood on the sidewalk outside a buzzing art gallery, his hands clammy despite the crisp Detroit air. Tonight was Tiffany's triumphant return, her first major show since the divorce, her first time stepping back into the light since her name had been dragged through the mud and then finally cleared. And he was here on her invitation. An actual physical invitation had arrived at his office, a handwritten message on the back. Lucas, this show is about reclaiming the woman I was before everything fell apart. I'd like you to be there if you want to come. Tiffany. For the past 6 months, they had met every Saturday. What started as just coffee had slowly evolved into coffee and long walks, rediscovering the city together. He remembered a museum trip, a long conversation about art and code, how both were just ways of conjuring worlds out of thin air. Their reconciliation was a fragile thing, built with deliberate care, like 2 survivors learning to stand together in the aftermath. There had been no kisses, no hand-holding that lingered past a fleeting reassurance. The idea of getting back together remained an unspoken territory. Still, something new was taking shape, a bedrock forged from honesty this time, one that couldn't be fractured by deceit or doubt. Lucas pulled in a steadying breath and stepped inside the gallery. The space was electric, pulsing with bodies. It seemed the entirety of Detroit's art world had shown up to witness Tiffany's triumphant return. Flutes of champagne circulated, and everywhere he looked, people were captivated, studying her canvases with sincere admiration. And there at the storm's calm center was Tiffany, radiant in a sapphire dress that seemed to illuminate her skin, her golden twist swept up in a graceful cascade. He saw her mid-conversation with a prospective client, her hands gesturing with an infectious energy, her face alive with a passion he knew so well. She looked whole again, confident, joyful. Just seeing her flourish from the sidelines was enough to make his chest ache with pride. Then her gaze lifted, scanned the room, and locked onto his. The smile that broke across her face wasn't the cautious, measured one from their coffee meetings. This was pure light, the kind that ignited her eyes from within. With a polite word to the buyer, she began weaving through the crowd straight toward him. "You made it," she breathed. "You sent an invitation," he replied with a small smile. "I wouldn't have been anywhere else." Tiffany gestured around them. "So, I think," he said, his voice low and sincere, "that you are absolutely brilliant." Your art was always stunning, Tiff, but this is on another level. It's like you've bled onto the canvas. All the hurt is there, but so is the resilience, the will to survive. He held her gaze. You took the ugliest parts of what happened and made something beautiful. That's just incredible. A small, genuine smile touched her lips as she glanced away. I had a lot to process. The canvas took most of it. I'm glad, he said softly. For a moment, they stood in a comfortable quiet, observing the dance of patrons and paintings. 3 pieces are already gone, she mentioned, a note of wonder in her voice. And we've barely been open 2 hours. That's incredible, Tiff. Yeah. Her voice trailed off as she shifted, turning to face him directly. Lucas, there's something I need to ask you. Anything, he answered immediately. After this is over, would you want to have dinner? A real dinner, not just coffee. His pulse kicked up a notch. Like a date, he asked, trying to keep his voice even. Maybe, she replied, a playful glint in her eye. Or maybe it's just 2 people who were once married sharing a meal. The jury's still out. Despite the ambiguity, hope flooded his chest, fierce and undeniable. I would love to have dinner with you, he said. Date or not. Good, she smiled. There's a new place on Woodward Avenue I've been dying to try. Meet me there at 9. I'll be there, he promised. Her fingers brushed his forearm, a spark of contact, and then she glided back to her admirers, leaving him rooted to the spot with a heart that felt too big for his body. She'd chosen an intimate Italian bistro, all low lights and quiet melodies. The conversation flowed easily from her show's triumph to his latest tech venture, weaving through everything and nothing. When the evening wound down and the bill arrived, Tiffany's hand shot out to claim it. This one's on me, she stated simply. Tiff, you don't have to. But I want to. Her gaze was direct and unwavering. For the last 6 months, you've covered every coffee. You've followed my lead. You've been patient. Let me have this one. He nodded slowly, understanding completely. This was about balance, about them rewriting the rules of their relationship from the ground up. Outside, the crisp night air was a welcome change. The thought of parting ways felt premature for both of them. Feel like a walk, Tiffany suggested. They found a rhythm walking beside the dark expanse of the Detroit River, the city's lights shimmering on its surface. I've been doing a lot of thinking, she finally said. About what? He prompted gently. About forgiveness. She stopped, turning to face him under the glow of a streetlight. About whether I'm capable of forgiving you, and whether I even want to try again. The world narrowed to her face, and the only sound Lucas could hear was the frantic drumming of his own heart. And the single word was all he could force out. She drew a long, slow breath. I think I'm ready. Not to rush, and definitely not to go back to what we were, but to build something new. To move forward. Together. The air left Lucas's lungs. Are you sure? He had to ask, his voice tight. There's no pressure. You're not pressuring me, she said, closing the small space between them. This is my choice. I am choosing you. Because after the agony, the broken trust, and the 3 long years we lost, I still love you, and I believe you've actually earned another chance. I have, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I swear to you I have. The therapy hasn't stopped. I'm fighting my demons every single day, and I will never, ever let my fears poison us again. I believe you, she whispered, and that's the only reason I'm willing to try. Her hand came up to cup his jaw, her touch a soft question against his skin. But the old way is dead. No more 80-hour work weeks. No more me swallowing my loneliness until it chokes me. We talk. We put each other first. We build something healthy. Yes, he breathed a raw, immediate agreement. Whatever it takes. Whatever you need. I'm here. I'm present. I'm yours. As he spoke, her smile returned like watching the sunrise after a long, dark night. That's good, she breathed, because I'm yours. I've always been. Then her lips found his, a touch so soft and tentative, it was as if they were discovering each other all over again. Then the kiss deepened, filled with certainty, as 3 years of crushing loneliness, pain, and enduring love poured into one single breathtaking moment. When they finally drew apart, tears were glistening on both of their faces. I missed you so damn much, Lucas whispered, pressing his forehead to hers. Not a day went by that I didn't miss you. Tiffany confessed, her voice thick with emotion. Standing there by the water, locked in an embrace, Lucas felt like he could finally draw a full, clean breath. We're doing this right this time, he vowed. I will love you the way you've always deserved. I will trust you. I will believe in you. And I will be the husband I should have been from the start. And I will be honest about what I need. Tiffany added, her eyes locking with his. And we will face our problems together instead of letting them poison everything. Deal? They kissed again, a gentler touch this time. It was a promise, a new beginning, a second chance that neither of them was about to waste. A year later, Lucas awoke to golden sunlight flooding the room and the rich, comforting aroma of brewing coffee. A smile touched his lips as he stretched. Then he rose and let the scent guide him toward the kitchen. There she was, Tiffany, wearing nothing but one of his t-shirts, swaying to a rhythm only she could hear as she prepared their breakfast. Her golden twists were piled high in a messy bun, and she was singing wonderfully off-key to some tune on her phone. Lucas just leaned in the doorway watching her, his heart full. This was the simple, perfect happiness he had nearly lost forever. As if she felt his gaze, Tiffany turned her face, instantly breaking into a radiant smile. "Morning, sleepyhead. I made coffee." "I can see that," he said, moving into the kitchen to wrap his arms around her waist from behind, placing a soft kiss on her neck. "You're up early," he murmured. "I couldn't sleep. I'm just too excited about the gallery opening next week." Tiffany turned in his arms, her hands resting on his chest. "Plus, I wanted to make you breakfast." "We still have that investor meeting at 10, right?" "We do," he confirmed. He had slashed his hours, delegated responsibilities, and made Tiffany his undisputed priority. "But 10 is hours away," he purred, his voice dropping. "We have time." "Time for what?" Tiffany asked, a playful smile dancing on her lips. "Time for this," he answered before kissing her slow and deep until she melted into him. They had remarried 6 months ago. It was a small ceremony with just their closest friends and family. Noticeably absent was Chantel, who was currently serving a 12-year sentence for fraud, conspiracy, and a laundry list of other charges. They had also bought a new place together, leaving the old penthouse and its ghosts far behind. There were too many bad memories there. This was a house in Indian Village with a spacious studio for her art and a quiet office for his work. It was a home they were building from scratch together. "I love you," Lucas said against her lips. "I love you too," Tiffany whispered back. "Even though you're interrupting my cooking." "Worth it," he chuckled. They stood in their sun-drenched kitchen, holding each other exactly where they were always meant to be. Getting to this place hadn't been a simple journey. It took couples therapy, brutally honest conversations, and the hard work of navigating through layers of hurt, betrayal, and insecurity. But they navigated it together, and that made all the difference in the world. Lucas and Tiffany had finally found their way back home. If this story reminded you that trust is everything in a partnership, that the truth always finds the light, and that true love can overcome even the most devastating betrayals, please drop a heart in the comments below. And if you believe in the power of second chances, comment "Love wins." Thank you so much for being a part of Lucas and Tiffany's journey back to each other. Please subscribe to our channel for more stories and join our membership community for exclusive videos and early access. We'll see you in the next one.